Welcome back to the second episode of Mule Deer March on the Samong Yang Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, as always, Samong, joined here by co-host Nate. And this week, like we will have for the entire series of this Mule Deer March, we have an awesome guest, and this is a repeat guest. You are probably the most requested guest that we have on the podcast. We have none other than Austin Harris here in the shop for once. We're not over in his neck of the woods, but you already know the drill. This podcast is all about mule deer, where we have guests and they're going to share their insight on how to hunt mule deer, and particularly Washington State mule deer. And we might dabble a little bit outside of that, but core-wise, it's Washington focused. So Austin is a Washingtonian, just like the rest of us. But before we get into all that stuff and before we let Austin share his thoughts, we want to thank the companies that make this possible. The first one being Vortex Optics. Right now is prime turkey prep season. So this is when I start looking at my turkey gear. So one of the main things I do now is my red dot stuff for my shotguns. I use the Viper red dot because the new Viper red dot from Vortex goes directly to the receiver of your shotgun. So you do not have to use an elevated Picatinny rail, which is then going to probably force you to use a cheek riser of some sort on the buttstock of your shotgun. So now if you're looking down the bead, just throw that Viper red dot on, and you're basically looking down your barrel still. You can use code SY10 if you shop at Euro Optic to save on all Vortex Optics products.
Second, we want to thank Onyx Hunt. This is an app that I've been using more and more after these mule deer podcasts we've been recording. It gets me all invigorated to do some more scouting. But whether you're just a basic member or a premium member with all 50 states, they just have awesome features. You got private boundaries, public boundaries, you've got forest cuts, you've got timber thinnings, which is a great one, and some just real hidden gems in there. Everybody finds their own way to scout, but Onyx makes it possible to do it all.
That's right. You can use code SY20 to save on your Onyx Hunt subscription. The next one we want to thank is Tacticam, particularly Reveal. These are our cell cams of choice. As we will get to momentarily, this is something that Mr. Austin Harris uses over here as well. So if it's Austin approved, you know it's legit. These are the cameras that if you set them up in a spot where it has cell service, when an animal comes by, it triggers the camera, and that camera sends it directly to your phone through the Tacticam app, or if you're on your desktop, to the actual Tacticam website. That way, you eliminate the need to actually go in and physically check your trail cams. And in the instances where you're chasing an animal, particularly like more mature animals where they might be sensitive to human pressure, you just completely eliminate the risk of pushing them out by constantly checking your trail cams.
Yeah, and lastly, we want to thank Argali Outdoors. This is a hunter-focused outdoor gear company. They've got tents, sleeping bags, trekking poles, knives, game bags, kind of all those essentials you need as a hunter. And one piece of gear that I was actually packing away the other day was, with very fond memories, is their Selway 6-person tent. It's a 6-person TP that actually fits 6 people, which is kind of their MO for all their products. What they say it is, it actually does. Their 0-degree bags are comfortable to 0 degrees. Their 6-person tents actually fit 6 people and a stove if you want. Just an awesome company and great products.
Well, before we get into our conversation and before we let Austin over here do some more dabbling on words, you guys know what time it is. We're going to hop into Trivia Duel. Austin, if I take it right, you've already prepared a Trivia Duel too.
I got something for you guys.
I think you're still the only guest to actually have these things prepared.
Yeah,
And so
I like it.
Austin is an avid listener, so he knows the whole ordeal about Trivia Duel and whatnot. So since you're the guest, we'll let you go first. What's your Trivia Duel? What do you got for us this week?
Okay, so this is a 2-part question. I'll give one to each of you guys.
Okay.
This data comes from the National Park Service. This will go to you, Nate. How many mule deer in the summer reside in Yellowstone National Park?
Is it a shot in the dark, or does he get multiple choice?
Oh, no, this is just
just a shot in the dark.
Okay.
I have absolutely no scope here, but my thought process going into this is that most of Yellowstone is winter range for mule deer, and that in the summer, Wyoming holds such a population of deer that are highly migratory and travel so far. So I'm going to go with 7,000.
Okay. Samong years is the other half. In the winter, how much does the Yellowstone National Park boundaries hold?
Well, like Nate, I am completely oblivious.
I think I'm too high, but I'll stick with 7,000.
You might want to follow your gut.
Okay.
You follow my gut. Yeah, I'm going to go to 1,200.
Yeah, I think a lot of the videos I watch in Yellowstone when they capture like wolves hunting happen in the snow. And I wouldn't necessarily say I've seen wolves killing mule deer, but I know they kill a lot of elk, but that's besides the point. It's that they winter there. If I had to guess, I'd probably say around, I don't know, 18,000.
Oh, you're going to shoot.
Final answer. I'm just going to say that there's a lot more mule deer there than other places.
Okay. So the summer population of mule deer, according to the National Park Service of Yellowstone, 1,850 to 1,900 deer in the summer.
Oh, okay.
That's a small range.
It's small. It shocked me. And then winter, fewer than 400 deer.
Oh, so it's not a wintering
It's the
ground.
opposite?
Yeah, they move out.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, correct. Yellowstone Lake is the highest alpine lake in the lower 48, I believe. It's the largest alpine lake. An alpine lake, by definition, is a lake, I believe, that's over 7,000 feet in elevation.
Interesting.
And Yellowstone Lake is over 7,000 feet to be in that category.
I had that totally backwards.
Well, you know what? Now thinking about it, 18,000 is a lot of deer.
It's a lot of deer.
That's more deer than.
But I mean, we're
what
talking
some states
about
have.
one of the higher population mule deer states, and
Well-
Yellowstone's massive.
Well, part
I
of
feel
it
like
has
was-
to do with the idea that you can't hunt in a national park. So I just thought that the numbers were going to be skewed.
Yeah.
It
But-
goes to show you there's not a ton of mule deer there. They have a lot of elk. They have a lot of bears, a lot of predators now.
And
Yeah.
bison.
Grizzlies, black bears,
You know,
wolves.
speaking of that, like I don't visit Yellowstone often. I think I've been there like 2 or 3 times. I really don't remember seeing mule deer, if I'm being honest.
Well, the reason why I looked this up recently is because I took the whole family. We went on a road trip through there. And I'm like, where are all the deer? We're seeing grizzlies. We're seeing some color-phased black bears. We've seen wolves. We've seen elk. We've seen bison, like everywhere. Like, where are all the deer? We've seen 3 deer
Yeah, I mean,
in
that's,
the entire park. And we
that's the
drove the
same
entire
story.
thing.
yeah.
That's interesting. Wow.
Well, we suck.
All right,
If, there-
Smong?
if there's one thing Trivia Duel reminds me, it's that I know absolutely nothing.
It's a great
was- I
way
was
to be
on a-
humbled right before you start talking about
I
things.
was on a decent streak of our recordings.
Yeah, you were. Well, maybe you guys get this one right because this one's a lot more simple, and I'll give you guys multiple choice. So you have a 25% odd of getting it right. So this has to do with food or survival, depending on how you look at it. So here's my trivia duel for all of you. The fruit that we know today as oranges are the color orange. However, the original orange fruit was not externally colored orange. What was the original external color of the orange fruit? Do you guys want a shot in the dark, or do you guys want the multiple choice?
What are you feeling?
I think shot in the dark.
I'll go
There's
shot
only
in the
so
dark.
many colors.
Okay.
I'm going to go with a really common, easy color.
'Kay.
I'll probably be wrong, but I'm going to say green.
Okay.
Dang it, that was my answer. Let's see, not orange and maybe green, but that answer's taken. I'm gonna go with brown.
Green and brown, final answers?
Yep.
Final answers.
All right. Oranges were naturally green. But here's the funny part. People think that, okay, if it's green on the outside, it's got to be green on the inside. It's not. It's still orange on the inside. So oranges are naturally green, and the transformation from green to orange actually comes from both artificial and natural factors. There's 2 avenues that go with it. So the natural factor is in their native tropical and subtropical habitats, the green color was a natural adaptation to the fruit. In the warmer regions, the temperature also did not drop low enough to trigger that chlorophyll breakdown that would lead to the vibrant orange color. So as oranges started spreading throughout the region by humans and get planted along different regions, colder climates like the Mediterranean region, because it's colder, it had that chlorophyll breakdown, which started turning oranges from green to orange. Artificially, as demand for oranges between like Europe and the Americas went up, the growers simply started to selectively grab the ones that were orange because they were more visually appealing to buyers. So over just selective process, the green stuff just kind of started to fade away artificially, and then the orange kind of just became dominant. And then one step further, techniques such as the use of like ethylene, it's become so popular that also helps the fruit ripen up and turn orange than green.
Nobody wants a green orange.
Apparently not. But I just thought it was fascinating because how many people know that the original color of an orange.
Especially people up in this part of the country that don't really
You'd
grow.
be surprised, like, what is at the store that is artificially colored?
Oh, a lot.
Oh, yeah. In today's world?
And people think that that's normal.
Yeah.
Like, trust me, like the meat you buy at the store that looks bright red, trust me, it's not naturally like that.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be brown.
Yeah. It's like soaking an apple in some warm water with some dish soap, and you'll see the film that comes off it from the wax and everything. It's
yeah.
crazy, man.
Well, it's like the stuff that McDonald's will put in the kids' meals to keep the apple slices from oxidizing and turning that brownish color. Like, why did those Happy Meal slices
Last so long.
and never turn brown?
They got the magic apples.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a little bit of insight to what we're actually consuming daily. It's kind of scary stuff the more you dive into it.
Yeah.
That's
Get
why
out there and hunt.
That's why the field to fork process, it pays off.
That's why we love to hunt.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, you boys ready?
I'm ready.
All right. And this is a little clue into something we'll be talking about today. And I spoiled it a little bit before the podcast, so you guys have a little bit of an idea. But what is the earliest opening day for a mule deer hunt in the U.S.?
In the U.S.?
Any weapon, any state, mule deer. Classified in their regulations as mule deer.
Okay. To specify, the start date.
The start date, the opening day of the season.
Okay.
So we're going to give you a month and a day in the month and a weapon type.
No, I'm just
a
saying
date?
it can be
Okay.
any. It can be any weapon. This
Got it.
isn't
Okay.
rifle or archery specific or.
I know that there are some mule deer seasons that happen in January, but it does not start in January. It simply overfills into January.
I should say the fall season.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not talking
Yeah,
about
we're
the
not
January
talking.
season.
We're talking about when it starts.
Technically, you'd be right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a guess?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Hit me.
I have an answer, but you can go first.
I'll have to allude this with, based on like what we were talking about before the podcast and that little slip that you made, I would have totally been wrong. And I would have said, I'm just going to go with what I would have said before. That way it's fair.
Okay.
I would have said mid-August archery tag.
It's like on August 15th.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
I don't exactly know the dates because I don't do this hunt ever, but I'm going to say July 1st.
You are much closer, actually.
Really?
So this is a California Zone A archery mule deer tag. And depending on the year, it opens anywhere between July 9th and July 12th.
Yeah. I would have said July 10th, but I just thought that that's when people found success and started posting photos. I didn't know that that was actually like the start date.
Yeah.
And is that over-the-counter opportunity or is that a special draw tag?
Zone A, I believe, is a draw.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty much everything in California, to my knowledge, is a draw for mule deer. Some are easier to draw than others. The only thing that you really have over the counter is blacktail. According to my knowledge, I've only hunted blacktails, or I've only hunted California once. That was last year. And I just know what I know because I've been doing some research on it just this year.
But my goodness, that's an early tag.
Well, can you imagine hunting deer in July in California with a bow when it's like 110 degrees out? Like, it sounds miserable.
This will be probably something that we touch on, but I have a archery mule deer tag that opens August 15 in Arizona.
That's
If you're in Arizona on August 15 with a bow, depending upon what unit you decide to hunt,
does not sound so fun.
Other than the season that Nate just talked about, I would say the majority of the earliest archery mule deer seasons open around middle of August. I know Nevada opens middle of August.
Yep.
I know most California units open middle of
and that's
August.
why I was going straight to that because I was just thinking, Nevada, Arizona, a bunch of these hotter climate western states, August 15, right in there.
Yep.
Yeah. That's kind of a segue, and we gave you guys a quick introduction in the beginning of the podcast here that we got Austin back. I think his first podcast he did with us on mule deer. Actually, I wasn't there. It was you and Samong, Austin, you and Samong, and it's still one of our most listened to. You guys love having him in the studio. He's a mule deer wizard, which is why we have him here for this month. But what are we talking about today, Austin?
So we're going to talk about, obviously, all things mule deer again. I just love it. I'm a mule deer fanatic, which is why I'm probably under-hunted for all the other species because I can't let go of mule deer. But Samong's quickly talking me into trying to push for some elk, maybe even a turkey at some point.
The good thing about turkey is it doesn't really overlap with mule deer. So
It really does
You don't
not.
have conflict there.
But, yeah, we're going to talk about if you're truly a mule deer fanatic, an enthusiast for mule deer, you can stay busy year round. There is really a ton of opportunity when it comes to not only the hunt and the harvest, but we're talking pre-season items too, such as shed hunting and season planning and tag applications and e-scouting and strategizing for what states to put points into and all of those different things. Mule Deer will present you with probably more time to spend on them than you legitimately can afford to. At least that's the case for me.
Yeah, I think across as like Nate's Trivia Duel, like there are some seasons where you can get a really early start and the seasons go really late. But even here in Washington alone, your mule deer seasons can be pretty long.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you get something like a multi-season tag where you might be hunting in September and you might even be hunting in December. There are some raffle or some special draws that you can hunt outside of September through December.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunity. And the beauty about it is Austin's kind of done it all.
Yeah, I've killed mule deer on the 2nd or 3rd of September, and then every month in between all the way out until that first week of December in our state.
A lot of people, including myself, would say like September, October, and November is primarily when most people are hunting mule deer. August is often kind of an anomaly where it's for the guys who have nothing better to do and they're trying to chase a velvet deer. That's really the only time they hunt in August. In December, it's oftentimes I've got nothing better to do. I still have tag burning in my pocket.
You're speaking for Washington State specifically. Because
yes.
August we can't hunt unless you have a draw tag.
Unless you have a very certain tag.
Yeah.
You can hunt in there, right? But majority of the time, the reasoning is that's why you would hunt in August. It's like you drew a tag or you go out of state and you hunt in a state where they have an August season for you. But in particular in Washington, once late November hits and you still end up in the mountains, you're usually seeing nobody.
Yeah.
Because people have already thrown in the towel.
I mean, for Washington mule deer, once your October season is over, unless you're doing a couple select archery hunts, there's not a whole lot of opportunity in November.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, people are doing your late season whitetail and stuff, but if you're talking mule deer, that's almost exclusively draw tags in Washington.
Let's start with the most common ones. For the archery hunters, they're hunting September usually.
Yep.
And then if you do muzzleloader, it's kind of like the last week or first early October. And then you go to your modern firearm season in October and whatnot. Run us down what you would deem or how you go about that, because I think you try to get a multi-season tag every single year, if I'm not mistaken.
I do, yeah. Kind of back and forth whether I will do my primary selection with archery or with modern firearm. And sometimes that's dependent upon if I have, maybe 1 point left over from the year before and I didn't draw multi-season, then I'm going to be more confident that I'm going to get it, lean one way or the other. The last couple years, I've just gone with archery and then been lucky enough to either buy a late, like turn back multi-season point or draw it. And I was able to kill both of my Washington State deer back to back in 25 and 24. They were both with a bow.
So for those of you who don't know, the most common things that you're going to do in Washington State specifically with mule deer is you can do a rifle hunt or an archery hunt, depending on what tag you have. But those are possibilities. The rifle hunt being the high buck hunt.
Correct.
And then the archery just being the general archery season.
Correct. But to go back to what you were saying, like if you have that multi-season tag in your pocket specifically, then you've opened Pandora's box. Like that really is the game changer in our state, allowing you literally several months worth of mule deer opportunity if you're going to go back and forth between all three weapon types. And then, if you choose one, which you have to, if you're wanting to choose a weapon type without that multi-season opportunity, then you're going to be stuck with either hunting that year with a bow or with a rifle. So if I'm stuck with a bow, say it's a bow year for me, then my season is going to start September 1. As soon as I can get out there, I'm chasing them, because that really is going to be your only window of opportunity for a velvet buck. And I've been chasing a velvet buck for years now. I shot my deer in 25 on September 3rd, and I got scraps for velvet. Like his bases had a little bit stringing on them. I really want a velvet buck. And if you're going to shoot a velvet buck in our state, it's going to have to be in that first week of September, in my opinion, because, you get out into that 3rd, 5th, 7th, and they're done. They're hard-horned. And a lot of times they'll change their routine up. And that's something that we can touch on real quick. Maybe we'll move from timelines from let's start from September 1 go through the whole gamut of all the hunting seasons, weapon types, and then after season's over, we'll fill in that gap from, say, January back up to the start of your next year.
Yeah, let's start with how you would break down a fall season if you had a multi-season tag in your pocket.
So perfect scenario is the last couple years I've had multi-season, so I've hit it hard right out of the gate in September. I mean, because I'm chasing velvet in the high country as much as I can. Now, mind you, you have to be careful on that because I hope I'm not wrong on this because I would have been in the wilderness area a long time ago if it was legal, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can hunt with a bow in the wilderness on September 1st.
No, nowadays in the wilderness, and you guys can fact check me, but to the best of my knowledge, wilderness areas where there is an active high country deer season is strictly the rifle tag. And you can only hunt in there from the 15th through the 25th, which is the high buck dates. If you have an archery tag, you have to be outside of that unit. And you have to hunt other units that don't have an ongoing high buck hunt. So, for example, like your archery general tag starts September 1st. That doesn't mean you can still go into a high buck wilderness area.
Correct.
It's completely closed.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I remember from years ago, and I've just never went back and changed. So hopefully they've never changed that on me.
It's still true.
I've never been in there in that scenario. But if you're diligent, you can find some national forest. This is a nugget here because there's not a lot of them. But if you jump on maps and you're looking for highest elevation you can possibly find in national forest, go start focusing on some of those spots.
And when you're saying high, are you just talking about like find the absolute highest peak you can find? Or are you talking about just a certain elevation band?
It's relative to the region, the mountain ridge that you're in. There are national forest opportunities that are above 7,000 feet.
Yes.
Okay. So I prefer to go there. I killed my buck in the 2025 season, this last year, at 7,013 feet on September 3rd in national forest.
Which is really, really high.
He was bedded in the rocks. There was nothing to eat around him. Like it was in a shaded spot at like 9 in the morning, maybe 8:30, hiking in. And I was going to go in for a 5-day solo hunt and bumped this deer out of his bed. Luckily for me, I was able to get back on him, and he thought he had eluded me. I didn't bump him hard. He heard me. He didn't see me. And I just heard that telltale, bounce of a deer. Able to pick him back up, drop a pack, made a stalk, and got it done. But the key thing is for me is if you're chasing velvet, get into those open areas where you can at least let the glass work for you. And then find those elevation bands that allow you, depending upon where you're at, and if you're traveling, great, you can give yourself more opportunities to go into some of these regions that have that higher elevation. But find some national forest that gets you up and look for these opportunities of open park-like settings. And don't be afraid of glassing into rocky, cliffy ridge country.
Yeah. I do want to preface this before we go any further is like not all wilderness areas are closed to archery season. There are only select wilderness that are open to high buck where you're not allowed to go in there with an archery tag, but that's not true across the board.
Not across the board.
It's not across the board. So you still have to go and actually look into the regulations to see where you can and cannot hunt. Mm-hmm. In Northeast Washington, there's a Samuel Priest wilderness. You can hunt archery up there because there's no high buck season.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. So that's the caveat. Any wilderness that has a modern rifle high buck hunt from September 15 to September 25th, you cannot hunt with a bow in there in September at all. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
So anyway, we got a multi-season tag in our pocket. We're going to focus really hard for those first 3 to 5 days of September of trying to capitalize on velvet.
And when you specify velvet, you talked about it a little bit, but you're specifically referring to velvet because oftentimes that first week of September, they're still in their summer pattern.
Correct.
So if you, like you kind of live in the woods throughout the summer, if you have a certain buck you're after and you have him patterned, your best shot is to kill him within that first week of opening season because he's probably still doing the same thing.
100%. And again, this is going to depend upon summer cycles, how quickly they'll drop velvet and hardhorn. Some years, they'll be 5, 7, sometimes 10 days sooner than they were. And if you start running cameras in certain basins and areas year after year after year, you will see some of these phenomenons of time differences. And you'll be like, oh, okay, I've seen this many new bucks show up hardhorn today, and this is only August 26th. The next year, you're like, wow, I'm still seeing a few stragglers in velvet. And now we're talking September 1st, September 2nd. So to your point is, yes, absolutely. If you want to try to catch them before they change from a summer routine As soon as they strip velvet and go hard horned, either they change immediately or you've got 2-3 days. And that's what I've just noticed. And that's allowed me to hunt specific target bucks. But come September 5, September 7, they usually start changing things up pretty dramatically.
So with that, it brings me to a topic. So last week when we talked with Brock, we talked about this topic where he has these bucks pattern in the summer, but then when they start going hard horn, they don't show themselves as much. But according to Brock, they don't move very far.
They don't.
They're still in the same general area. It's just that they don't daylight as much per se. What's your experience on that?
Okay, so last 2 years, I have ran probably triple the amount of cameras in this one particular basin where I'm trying to capitalize on one of 4 bucks. And they're all 160 or better. I mean, I've shared some pictures with you. They disappear by September 5, September 7. And so I started running timber cameras, and they just drop off into the back basin or tuck into what I call pocket country, because this area I'm hunting in has got a lot of burn, but there's one shaded, like a northern facing slope that still holds mature timber, and it's still intact. And they have that place. There's beds in there, there's trails in there, and they just timber up. And so I started putting cameras in there, and I've killed some of my biggest bucks, but on a modern tag, doing some of that still hunting stuff. And so kind of the way I would hunt that same buck the first 3 or 4 or 5 days of September starts to change as soon as we get to that September 5, September 7 area. I'm still going to glass intensively for that first light, last light, because you're still going to catch them deer daylighting, but it's going to be at those prime times only. And it's going to be on what I call that border edge cover country, where they're just coming out at the edge of that dark timber, and they're not like they were August 25th in the middle of a wide open burn at 4 in the afternoon feeding in the sun. Mm-hmm. So you still are hunting the same deer, but you've got a few days, I guess is what I'm trying to capitalize on, a few days at best at the very beginning of September with the bow in your hand. And as soon as that window is over and they kind of change things up, you need to change things up. And I always tell people, do not be afraid of spending a window in the middle of your day just timber sneaking. I mean, just going super slow. Maybe even bring a second set of optics for that, like some 8s or 10s at the most, and just move up in the timber. What I always like to do, and I do this in any general setting when I'm hunting for mule deer or anything, if I come up to a ridge, I'm not going to just daylight myself on the ridge and just walk up there and be, like a peacock looking around like, oh, I wonder what I can find. No, you strategically come up to that ridge in the shade, in the shadow of a tree or a rock outcropping or something, and then you clear that area, glass it from the shade if you know you're going beyond it. Because why would you want to walk through deer or bump deer to go get deer, or any species for that matter? So translate that to the micro in the timber. Now we're looking 60 yards, 80 yards, 100 yards, depends upon the density of the timber that you're hunting in. But it's really the same tactic, just much closer. And all you do is scan forward, and then you pick a stopping point. Like, this is what I can effectively glass, and I'm going to glass this like crazy. Make sure that we don't have a bedded buck in here. And then we move up, and we just move up no farther than what you've glassed. And actually, I stop a little bit shy of what so there's always overlap. And then you start the process over again. And yeah, it takes a while, but I'm sure everybody's done it. If you haven't, you will. If you just hike through timber to hopefully bump a buck and then shoot him, good luck.
Sometimes it works with the rifle.
Sometimes it does.
Hardly does it work with the bow.
Yeah, exactly. And we're talking September right now.
Yeah.
And so your mentality when you go into these hillsides where you're like, I'm going to spend the afternoon with my bow in September, sneaking through here, you're more of just like, wherever I get to, and just take my time? Or do you usually have like, I want to get through this patch of timber this afternoon? Because I feel like that's usually when I get out into the woods, if I'm still hunting, whether it's conscious or subconscious, I'll kind of set myself a goal to get to. And that's when I find myself like speeding up.
Well, I used to do that. You're exactly right. What it created in me is this anticipation or an anxiety of like, hey, I got a goal in mind, but I also want to be back on my glassing knob for the last hour and a half of the day. So I just need to check the rest of this timber out. And it's like, no, I bumped too many deer just pushing it that fast, especially when we use a bow. Like, you've got to make sure that you see the deer before they see you, and primarily catch them bedded and be able to then alter your approach. And now your still hunting just goes from still hunting to a stalk. It changes that fast. So I used to set a goal. Like, I want to get to here, we'll check this amount, and then I need to race back up to the glassing knob because I want to be there for the last hour and a half. And I don't do that now. If I'm going to still hunt, I just give myself, I'm going to do it until this time. Doesn't matter where I go. I want to effectively and quietly and slowly, methodically clear this country, move through this timber. And then when it gets to this time, I know I need that much time to be back at my glassing knob, and I just call it. Doesn't matter where I'm at. And so that's kind of just a little tweak that I've done just because I just started blowing too many deer out.
Mm-hmm. So basically the idea of how you hunt your first week of September and I guess slightly middle September is you're technically doing the same exact thing in just different areas. Meaning the first week of September, it's often I'm trying to glass him, I'm trying to put him to bed, put a stalk on him.
Correct. And I'll stay on that ridge the entire day, dark to dark.
You won't move.
Oh, yeah.
But then in the second half, it's like you might not have an animal bedded, but you're going to basically be actively stalking as if you know that the animal is there. You just can't put visuals on him. Correct. Which is why you're going through the timber hoping to find a buck bedded, even though you might not know exactly where he's bedded. Whereas in the first week of September, ideally, it's I've got a buck bedded, I know where he's at. Now I got to put the stalk on. So it's essentially you're playing the same game, just in a different location.
Yeah.
Open country where he might be bedded under a little pine or whatever, and then just dark timber where you might not know exactly where he's at, but you know he's around the area.
Exactly. I like to think of it as first 3 to 5 days, you're hunting the same way, but you got a micro and you got a macro version. Macro being like big vantage. You're still super, super patient because you can stay there all day long. Versus now you're moving through the timber on September 7th through the 10th, and you're still hunting, and you're still super, super patient, and you're very slow, but you're only covering tiny blocks of country at a time. Same exact style as far as your thought process. I'm going to be slow. I'm going to be methodical. I'm going to do this right, not rush through it. It's the same reason why I won't leave the glassing knob. And the only reason why I do this in these scenarios is because of preseason, which we'll get to at the end. But because of preseason scouting and cameras, I know the deer are there. I'm just trying to find them. So the first few days, I'm trying to find them with glass and patience sitting in a spot. Then we change that to now I'm trying to find them with patience and stealth, but I'm just very slowly moving through timber. It's the same deer that we're hunting. He's just changed a little bit because he's hard-horned now, but we're still very, very focused on a basin due to the data that our revealed cameras have provided.
And so one of the things that allows you to be patient, maybe you're just a very patient person by nature, but if you're not, one of the things that allows you to be patient is the confidence that the preseason work has given you with these animals. It's not hunting here to see if there's animals here and hoping that you bump into something. I mean, it is hoping you bump into something.
There's always that chance, but you're 100% right. So there's two biggest teachers here that helped me. First one was failure. Hiking and hiking and hiking and hiking and hiking and just bumping deer and never shooting nothing when I was young. That just didn't work for me with a bow or with a rifle. So I got to trust the glass more and more and finally making myself sit on a ridge somewhere and glass. And then once you start killing a couple of deer because of effective glassing, your faith and confidence in that style and operation of hunting just starts to grow. Then you add cameras into the spectrum. I started running cameras in 2013, and it changed the way I hunt deer. And I said this on the first podcast that we did together. It will make you go from being a deer hunter to hunting a deer or a said group of target bucks. So now you go with a completely different approach and a totally different mindset because I'm not in this basin just on a whim. I'm not in on this basin hoping to see a deer. I'm in this basin because I know deer A, B, and C live here. I've seen them in my preseason scouting and on camera. So that's what gives you the patience and the confidence that, like, I'm not burning 3 to 5 days, September 1 through 5, not moving on this glassing knob because these deer have been in this burn every single day, right? So that gives you that type of patience. If they move and then they don't start daylighting anymore and you got one major focal point to focus on, it's the only standing dark timber, you can pretty much guarantee they're going to be there. They might not be right up against the edge of that burn, but you know that those deer didn't go into the next country. They're there.
Just to add on to that too, I think if you hunted an area, and you might have touched on it on the first podcast too, if you have like multiple pockets of timber, a lot of times if you're preseason scouting, you already know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know where bed A, bed B, bed C's are.
Yep.
So if they're not in bed A, guess what? You're going to go to bed number 2.
Yep.
And so that's how you kind of hone in on it. And I think that's something that's served you well.
Yeah. I've had that happen to where I'm like, okay, there was a really small pocket of dark timber. I moved through that. There's nothing there. Well, I can dip over the ridge, get out of sight from the main burn in the feeding area if they did happen, and I can boogie down the side of this ridge, come back into a saddle, and there's a large piece that I'm thinking in particular. That's going to take me a lot more time to try to move through. But if they weren't the little one, they've got to be here. And so you get the patience from your intel. And when the intel is telling you they're here and you've got, large mature bucks, you will force yourself to be patient, especially if you're seeing them, whether that's in your preseason scouting or in reveal footage and whatnot. You're going to be willing to do that tedious work and act like you're actually stalking through the timber. And sometimes you'll stalk through that timber, 4 or 5 hour window during the middle of the day, and you don't see a deer. That's fine. Then you just move back up. And I've had it happen 2 or 3 days in a row, and then I end up killing something on an evening glassing session. I don't feel like I wasted my time. Mm-mm. He was there. He just eluded me.
So how long do you figure out that they hold that pattern to? So they're velvet, they're daylighting, and then as soon as they go into that stage 2 where they kind of start holding up, how long do you find out that they hold that pattern until? Well, do they hold that pattern until late October when they start to kind of get in pre-rut mode? Because archery season goes until the 20s,
towards
24th
the very
or
end
something
of
like
September,
that.
Yeah.
So how long do you hold that pattern of let me kind of hunt the dark timber? Because you're starting around say September 6th or something.
Yeah.
Do you hold that same train of thought all the way until the season ends, or is there something that you give maybe between then and the end of season?
Honestly, it's a geographical and a situation, and it's also a pressure situation. Some of these areas that you go into, they will start getting more and more pressure. As you get to that first weekend and then that second weekend in September, people are starting to hit it with bows. If you're in that area where you're getting pressure, the deer are going to start moving even farther and changing even more dramatically. Some of the areas that I'm going to, you can get away from people, and the deer will do the exact same thing from the 7th to the end of the month.
So depending on pressure.
It depends upon pressure. It's pressure specific, in my opinion, because that's what my cameras have shown me. Like, I've had some places where all of a sudden I don't see a single soul on camera from June 1st until the first Friday of September. And then all of a sudden I got somebody walking by with a bow. And then the second weekend I got 3 people over the course of a week that walked by. And then I got 2 or 3 target bucks in there, and I've never seen them again on camera. They're just gone. I think pressure is a huge contributor to disruptive behavior. And that's like a normal thing. But if you find a spot where you're not picking up anybody and you're leaving your cameras, even through season, like if you get done September and you got only 2 weekends to spend in there, leave your cameras. Find out if anybody else hunts this for the last half of September and just pick up data, because you can learn things not even specific to the deer. Find out how many people walk through. If somebody walks through and all of a sudden, man, I thought this was a great spot, but there's 4 hunters that came through here in the month of September, those deer are going to be disrupted. So start thinking about that. But for me, this last spot that I've been going, I'm trying to get one of 4 bucks out of there. I don't have anybody coming through there. It's national forest.
To add on to that, you do go to some crazy places. I don't think a lot of people in their right mind are going where you're going. So that's a little bit off topic compared to what some people are willing to do out of their own natural right.
Sure. So I guess if you take this into a spot that could see a handful of archery hunters in front of your cameras, expect the deer to start changing then mid-September. It's going to start changing if they're getting pressure.
So hunting pressure, I mean, let's touch on it really quick. Hunting pressure is something that a lot of people give a side eye towards, where they hate hunting pressure. They hate seeing other hunters. Have you, because I know for a fact that, you've hunted up around my deer camp. There's a lot of people. I mean, you see a lot of people. And I bring it up because hunting pressure has actually been the reason why my family's been successful a lot of times at deer camp.
Yep.
Because we use hunting pressure to our advantage. We use people to let them push deer to us and we shoot the deer.
Yep.
Have you ever found that to be something that you have used to hone in on your success?
100%. That area that we have kind of mutually hunted, I've taken some great bucks in that area during the modern rifle season, and you know what the pressure is like in that area. It is not a secret.
No.
Everybody and their dogs out there, the Orange Army is going. I call that prime time for pocket country hunting. You find a little pocket that's between two roads, and that little, we touched on this on the first podcast, but I've killed some of my biggest bucks in pocket front country, less than 1.5 miles from roads, stud bucks that anybody would be happy to shoot on the first morning of a quality tag. And this is during the general season, but I just use that pressure to my advantage because I know that now these deer are going to be pigeonholed into picking. Do I cross some of these big, expansive parks, or do I hunker down and I get into this timber? Both of those deer I shot, still hunting.
Exactly. So that works in the aspect where you're hunting a lot smaller country than, say, like the up in the Cascades, like the top of the top.
Yeah.
When you have people that roll into your spots where you're essentially glassing massive country, and let's say they bump the deer out. If they bump the deer out one time out of where you've been seeing in the summer, do you just essentially say, not going back to the spot, I have no idea where the deer are? Or are you one step ahead and you're like, I already know where those deer are going to go, or most likely going to go, and that's where I'm going to now focus my efforts to actually try to bow hunt this? Because we're still technically in September at this point.
Correct. For me, it depends upon when somebody bumps them. Like if it's some hiker that's bumping them like in August, and I'm not going to be back in there with a bow for 2 more weeks, I'm sticking with my plan. They'll be back.
Okay.
If all of a sudden I have a father-son duo of archery hunters and they're ridge walking and they pass a couple of my cameras on saddles or something like that, then I'm going to have to really consider, like, what am I going to do on my next attempt in there? And then I am going to focus on timber. I mean, for sure. It doesn't matter if I'm on the 5th or the 7th or the, out towards the end of the month. I'm going to be watching that dark timber and maybe setting up closer to those edges. Because I played cat and mouse with a deer about 3 years ago, and he never came out. I got footage of him in my spotter, and he never came out to feed in the open. He stayed right in the edge of the timber line like this little ghost, and he just fed just inside the timber, and he wouldn't come out, and it was almost dark anyway. I didn't have a play on him with a bow, but I was like, oh, come on, let me into your head here. What are you going to do? And he just never would come out. And so if they're being pressured and they're sticking in that timber, then maybe they aren't going to come out for a few days. They're just going to edge feed, and then they're going to just fade back into that timber.
So to your experience, the deer don't really get pushed out. They could, but some more times than not, they might just hole up even more.
I think so.
It's not necessarily to say that they're out of the country and out into the next county. It's just
No.
Now they're just a little bit wiser. They just show themselves less, but they're not necessarily out of the vicinity that you've been scouting.
And we're still talking some of this high country September stuff. We got to remember these are giant basins that I'm specifically talking about in these personal experiences. These are not, 500-yard across ridge to ridge drainages. These are mile to 2-3 mile drainages. So they might move up a half mile. They're still in the same basin. Yeah, it's going to make it harder to find them, but we're talking giant burn country. And when there's dark timber pockets A, B, C, and maybe D, there's only like 4 little islands. And when I say little, we're talking some of them are quite large, 400, 500-yard swaths of dark timber. You could walk right through one of those on one edge, and that buck would be bedded in the other edge and never even know you were in there. Again, it's archery hunting, and it's archery hunting mule deer. It's not easy. It's probably one of the hardest things you're going to do. But I feel like there are ways to predict the deer's changes, predict their movements. I always go back to this. I think that mule deer can be predictable, not patternable. And I stick with that statement. Like, they're not a whitetail. I think you can get a predictability going based on your past experiences, how deer react to pressure when you bump them, what you obtain from your footage on your cameras, and you can start to predict some of those movements. There's a giant margin of error in there because they're just mule deer, and they're the king of deer.
They just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in that case, then it sounds like that's a pretty good, thorough examination of how you approach, I would say, first half September mule deer.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we're talking about like September 15th, where you start having this overlap in terms of season with high buck, with a rifle, and your general archery season in units where you're not allowed to shoot a deer during archery season. Is your approach to finding the deer the same exact thing, whether it's a high buck hunt with a rifle and an archery in a general unit? Like, are the deer still the same? Like, you're still doing the same exact thing? Or is it now that you have a rifle, you're more comfortable to do certain techniques that you weren't necessarily comfortable to do with a bow?
Yeah, I think that I would definitely say that I will push the envelope way harder and be more of an aggressive hunter with a rifle, because you can make a lot more mistakes at 500 yards than you can at 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will play a deer way more aggressive if I'm rifle hunting, because I don't need to get that close. I always try to get as close as possible, and I watch and read the animal's behavior. If he starts getting weird on me and acts like something's up and I'm at 400 and I got a clear shot, for me, that's an ethical shot. I'll just lay down and shoot that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if he has no idea, I'm going to move in. I'm going to try to get a 200-yard shot if I can. But your question, going back to that,
Are the deer any different?
wilderness area, you remember this, though, wilderness area haven't been affected yet by hunters because you're not allowed in there yet. So technically you are that first archer on the 1st of September, but now you're that first guy going in on the 15th with the rifle. So I tend to still post up in glass on the 15th or 16th, 17th if I'm on a high buck hunt with a rifle, just like I would if I'm in high country national forest with a bow on the 1st of September. Because even though these deer have hard-horned in these areas, they haven't been pursued yet, and they're still a little more likely to be in that summer routine, even hard-horned. And a lot of times these deer specifically are in these wilderness alpine basins at high elevation, and they're in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. They're still eating. My highest elevation buck I've ever killed in Washington State, I killed at like 8,000 feet, just under. And he was just pounding the groceries down. Really? And it was 9:30. He was in full sun.
And this was during high buck.
This was, September 21st, I believe. 21st or 22nd. Mm. And he was in the wide open, in the sun, in a burn, just eating, going to town. That was on day 5 of the hunt. We had watched, between that entire hunt, we had glassed up 7 shooter bucks, and all of them were daylighting. All of them were in the wide open. In fact, one day, 5 of them were bachelored together. So they were very much comfortable, very much in their summer routine. But again, we go back to that word pressure. This is a basin that didn't have a trail in it. This was a basin that they hadn't seen a hunter for sure, but they also hadn't seen any hiking pressure. There's just nothing back there. And so I think that we've got that phenomenon of going hard-horned, starts to change their behavior. But we also get that thing called pressure from hunters with bows in September, and that really starts to change behavior. So between hard-horning and between pressure, deer will move. But if a deer hard-horns and they still have yet to see a person in this basin all year long, they will hold that summer routine longer than a deer who's seen 3 or 4 people by September 10th walking through with bows. So I would totally set up differently on a first, few days of high buck, especially if I'm not seeing anybody in the basin. I haven't taken a trail to where I'm glassing from. Like, I'm remote, I'm tucked off a trail 1 mile, 2, sometimes 4 miles or more. I'll hunt that completely different versus a hunt where there's a couple spots that I have what I call backup spots. If I'm hunting with a bow and then I decide, you know what, I got a multi-season tag, I'm going to do just a quick overnight 2-day wilderness hunt. There are opportunities to do that in our state where you're not super far in. You can literally, some of these places have a trailhead that's almost at the boundary. Mm-hmm. And you can dive in and you could day hunt the wilderness with a rifle. Those areas, I found, have always been pressured. Maybe you're going to want to try some timber stalking in some of those areas on September 17th, 20th, in that range, because you know that these low barrier of entry wilderness opportunities for the high buck hunt, they're going to get hit first. Yep. It's just the low-hanging fruit. So then that's fine. Use that pressure, like you were saying, to your advantage. Timber stock those areas. But if I'm in that one spot I was at in 21 and I'm miles and miles and miles in, I'm posting up on a ridge for the whole week.
when it comes to the wilderness areas, and this is kind of the first year that Nate and I did it, is a lot of those trailheads are often shared with hikers. And where Nate killed his 2021 buck, I mean, there was no deer sign until we got to like 4 miles in. Like that was just the way it was. And so I just wanted to put a caveat out there because it's not like you're just going to jump the boundary into the wilderness area and be like, oh, look, there's going to be deer here somewhere. Sometimes no, like sometimes there is a level or an entry level of how far you actually have to be before you can even start timber hunting per se.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the deer we saw, we found a bachelor of like 5 essentially forkies. Like you're talking about like 2.5-year-old bucks, and they were like 5 miles in. And they were kind of just out in the open doing their normal buck things.
Summer habits.
But then on our way out, when we like truly came out with all our camp and everything, we ran into Dad and 2 sons. And when we told them where we shot the deer, they couldn't believe it. They're like, we would never go that far to go shoot a deer. And I'm like, we shot him like 4 miles in. Like that doesn't seem that far. But to them, they were literally, like you said, just hopping right over the border and just kind of scouring around. They were like, we haven't seen a doe.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but to the majority of people out there listening, it's not as easy as, oh, there's a deer right over the border. I just got to go find them.
It doesn't matter that it's a wilderness hunt, it's a high buck hunt. If it has a really low barrier of entry and it's close to a trailhead and it's got a big trail going right out of the parking lot, and, you know, there's several that come to mind, you know, you're a couple 100 yards out of the trailhead and there's the plaque, and now you're in wilderness area. Doesn't mean there's a deer behind every bush now. But what you can do is you can turn off of that trail and head up over that ridge, and then now you're glassing into a basin when you might have a trail 800 yards below you, and you just did 1,000-foot vertical, or some places you can do 2,000 feet vertical right off of a trailhead that basically is, you can almost look down and see the trailhead. You just gained 2,000 feet of elevation, but now you're glassing into a basin that's wilderness, and you might pick up bucks right away.
Yeah.
I've personally done it. So it can definitely be done, but it doesn't matter if you're putting the miles in or the elevation in. There's something that you're going to have to do. There's a recipe for just getting that separation, because what are we trying to eliminate? Pressure.
There's nuances that you got to be able to pick out to have that type of environment you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to more or less just be able to commit to something. You're going to have to commit to distance. You're going to have to commit to elevation. You're going to have to commit to maybe neither of those that much, but you're bushwhacking through absolutely horrible country that takes you, you know, 10 minutes to go 100 yards. But all of those, I would almost argue, are not any more low barrier entry. Like, you can be in a fairly high barrier entry spot that's close to a trailhead, or you can be in a high barrier to entry spot that is out in a plains land just because you're 15 miles away from, you know, off, you know, even if it's flat without a bunch of trees type thing. So I think you're still raising your barrier to entry, because most true low barrier entry spots are going to have people.
100%.
I mean, that's true across the board.
Yeah.
High country, lowland, you name it.
And I mean, like, before the days of Onyx, right? You're talking 15, 20 years ago, you know, there was definitely like people's secret spots that were like that. Weird juts around public or private, you know, or, you know, a trailhead off of a turnoff people didn't really know existed except for a few people. But with the technology we have available now, the amount of scouting and the amount of e-scouting you can do from home, the fact that e-scouting is even a thing, you have to be willing to put in a work somewhere.
Yep. Well, and that's what just separates you from the pressure, and that's ultimately what we keep like kind of repeating is whatever level of work you're willing to do will give you that level of separation from additional pressure. It's really bad when you put in a ton of work and you get into some really remote basin and you glass across the ridge and there's a tent, there's a couple other campers that are hunting in there, and you're like, oh man. More and more people are being willing nowadays to do it than ever before.
This exact same thing happened to my buddy Tanner and I this last fall in Oregon. It was a spot we were not that far in, single digits in the miles, but there was a 1.6 mile stretch where we gained over 3,000 feet. It was like 1.6 miles and 3,400 feet elevation.
Mind you, the amount of deadfall.
In deadfall burn, I mean, I'm not the most fit person out there, but like a place that gasses me. It takes me a day to get in there, just not hunting, just a full day commit. And we got up there, and the next day we glassed across, and there was 2 young dudes just like us in their backcountry tents, you know, sitting on glass.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, It happens, but it doesn't happen all the time. But it absolutely is something in the last couple of years I've run into more.
Mm-hmm. I would say that's getting more and more common.
Yep.
That never used to be the norm. But anyway, that's kind of how I would approach a high season hunt with a rifle in the wilderness area. Is if I'm putting in the effort and I know I've got that layer of separation between me and the other pressure from other hunters, I'm going to post up and I'm going to do a lot more glassing and hunt that more like I would a September 1 through 3, 1 through 5 archery style hunt. If I'm finding there's more competition, if I'm in that scenario where you just presented and they're maybe hiked right through that basin the day before I showed up, then I might pivot a little bit and we might do some timber stalking. We might use their pressure to our advantage. If we see them walking down a ridge and we know like, oh, this ridge dives down and it comes up, there's a perfect glassing point. I know they're going down there. Well, then I might parallel them and get down there and post up just a little higher than them and watch them make their trek, because I've literally watched deer flush from other hunters when I had a bird's eye view and they're going to a glassing knob or they're transitioning or going somewhere, and I've watched them move deer out below them. They were completely oblivious. So use that pressure to your advantage. It doesn't matter if it's front country, back country, archery, modern firearm, it doesn't matter.
Well,
Use it.
That's exactly what I was pointing at earlier when I brought up the idea of pressure. It's like people don't like seeing pressure. People don't like seeing other hunters. But the truth of the matter is it's an element in your hunt. If you're hunting on public land, it's just part of it.
Yep.
And growing up, I hunted with people all the time. I would say that I see less people now than I used to see when I was like 6 years old. As crazy and as counterintuitive as it sounds today, that's, according to my experience, is true. I see less people today than I did 20 years ago. Now, whether or not that matters, it's just what I had to say there. But I think a lot of times, especially in areas where you have done your homework and you truly know those animals, sometimes better than they know themselves, even when I see people in there, it doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. Because, like you said, they might be in there hunting for deer, but you are in there hunting for a deer.
Right.
You're not even playing the same game. You might be sharing a space, but it's just like my bull up here at Corkscrew. I had two guys camped above him for 400 yards for 2 days in a row. And they left, and he came out, and I shot him. And he walked no more than 200 yards above where he was bedded all day.
Wow.
But that's why I was saying, it's like people see other hunters, and they get mad about it. I'm like, dude, most of the time, you're not even on the same wavelength. Most of the time, and it's not to toot anybody's horn, but most guys that are out there, they don't know what they're doing. They're out there because they found a spot that looked good on eggs, but they don't know those animals as well as somebody who's been scouting all summer. And particularly, they probably don't even know how to glass that well. You can put two guys, one who's really good at glassing, one that is not that good at glassing the same exact spot, and one person won't pick out a single deer.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why, like, when people bring up pressure, I'm like, does pressure really affect my hunt that much? Most of the time, it doesn't bother me. If anything, I have felt that pressure has helped me be successful. The triple that my dad, my brother, and I did with the elk, that was planned like F. Because we had gone to all the spots that we wanted to camp at that night. And there were like just RV campers everywhere. And so it forced us all the way down to the middle of the road in this random spot where we somehow were low enough where we were able to like glass back into where we would have glassed from. And that's what allowed us to see the elk.
Yeah.
And we were the only people that saw those elk, because everybody else looking out on eggs, they go to the things that pop out on the map, and they go to these vantages. But then from those directions or from the angle, you can't see where this herd of elk was. But from our off angle, if you will, we were like, dude, there's a whole herd of elk over there. And so we literally went back. We parked where other trucks were parked, but we went way past them because they were only like a mile in, thinking that they can oversee country. But again, until you were literally on top of these elk, you couldn't see these elk. And those animals, why are they there? Because they've been hunted since archery season, the archery quality elk season, muzzleloader season. And so by the time rifle season rolled around, guess what? They're not going to be up by the road where everybody else is hunting. So that's why so many people, when they see pressure, they want to just like, they're mad and they're angry about it. And I understand it. But more times than not, I like it when there's pressure, because here's the thing. Our conversation we have at deer camp every day, we hate hunting the weekday because there's not enough people out there. Because when Monday rolls through and everybody's out of the woods, nobody sees deer because all the deer are not moving. But when Saturday comes around and people start pushing deer around, that's when our guns start going off. And so that's why I bring it up from a different perspective that some people might not have, because all people see is they see people and they see pressure, but they have never understood it from the other perspective of how you can use that as a tool. Because that's something, like you said, you brought up your idea of like, when you see so many people, guess what? The deer are still around. Where are they going to go? All of a sudden, there's so many places you can eliminate where you don't have to be, and just be like, these are the little pockets that I need to focus on. And more times than not, those are where the deer are holding up. I mean, we've shot a lot of 150-inch plus deer at deer camp. Exactly doing that. Just still hunting through these little pockets where people are driving right by sometimes. One of my cousins, he hunts 500 yards off the road every single year at deer camp. He kills a deer every single opening morning. He always kills. He's killed one, I think, 8 years in a row.
Wow. 500
yards off the road where people are driving back and forth. So it goes to show, like, yes, pressure is one thing, but if you don't know how to go about it, it sucks. I just wanted to bring that topic up because it's a very touchy topic, but I think there's a lot of merit if you know how to use it well.
There is. And again, it all depends upon how intimate of a knowledge do you have in the area where you're hunting, right? You guys have been there for 30 plus years in the family. You know that place inside and out. And if you haven't been hunting an area for, say, but a couple years, but you're running cameras and you've been in there boots on the ground, you've been scouting, you've been watching and observing summer habits and routines, watching deer go from bedding area to feeding area, you have a completely different knowledge and perspective of the basin than that Joe Blow who's walking in on opening morning with a rifle. So 100%, you know, like, okay, if this deer is supposed to walk from here to here, and these guys are coming in from this angle, yeah, I'm not stoked that they're back here in this basin with me, but that means if those deer stay true to their habits, they're going to go this way from the pressure. I'm going to loop around, and now instead of glassing from where I thought was going to be my best spot, I'm now setting myself up because I anticipate pressure is going to push these deer that way. And so, you know, 100%, you can use pressure to your advantage, front country, back country, it doesn't matter.
And it's funny to say because I enjoy those high pressure hunts on my end of things. I love it when I can just like see people and I read people and I'm like, this is exactly what that guy's thinking because I've been to that spot. I know what he can see because I've glassed from that spot before. And I've seen where the deer are most likely to pop out from where he's looking. And I've seen where the deer run. And then you position yourself a little bit off angle, if you will. And you ambush that deer.
Exactly.
I can't tell you how many deer we've killed at deer camp because we've done that very technique. But again, like to your point, there's a certain level that you have to understand about that spot for you to be able to actually be in the position to be successful.
Right.
You can't just blindly set up and hope that he's going to push you. One of the things that people tend to forget, and it comes to pressure, is when an animal gets bumped, he's not randomly running. Every time he says there's danger, I'm running, he has a destination he's trying to get to. And that happens with animals that get wounded. You know, you gut shot a deer, he's not just blindly running in the woods. He has a spot that he wants to go in bed. And it's the same way whether or not they get shot or just get bumped. When he's running, he knows, like, I need to go to this other spot. You know, and a lot of times it's the big bucks around where we hunt deer camp. They run from a certain pocket. If they get bumped out, they know the next pocket that they're going to be safe in. And so it's not as random as it might seem when it comes to pressure, which is why if you have intimate knowledge of that herd or that area, it's going to serve you well, which, I mean, we'll circle back to how you get your preseason scouting done, but that's why it's so crucial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's 100% true.
So high buck and that general archery season in September pretty much end right at the same time, the 25th, 24th of September. And then right when that ends, the general muzzleloader season starts, usually, depending on what exact tag you have or what hunt you want to do. Because blacktail, I think they're a little bit different than, like, say, a mule deer or whitetail, if I'm not mistaken. I digress. That's not the point. The point is muzzleloader comes right after. So with muzzleloader, this is oftentimes you're hunting deer that are a little bit more skittish than, say, when you got the fresh start with the archery season or during high buck. Now, I don't have too much muzzleloader experience because I've frankly never really done it. One of the things that a lot of people have done in the past couple years is they don't like pressure. And guess where you see the most pressure from? Rifle season. So I've had this influx of people that have transitioned from rifle season to muzzleloader season. So they start about 2, sometimes 3 weeks earlier because they think that, you know, it's a muzzleloader. I can still shoot relatively far. I don't have to draw my bow. I don't have to do all the nonsense with the bow. But at the same time, I'm hunting in a season where there's often less pressure. The caveat is the deer are not behaving the same way that they are during rifle season. So in your experience, and this could just be from you being out there and not necessarily going after deer per se, but would you say that there is a big difference with how they behave from like that September 15th through the 25th to like that last week / first week of October? Or do you think that deer are still pretty much in the same pattern? It's just that the season has now changed.
Yeah, I would say that as not being a muzzleloader hunter, I have to qualify. I'm not that, but I have been in the woods a lot during that time, bear hunting specifically. And then, of course, I have continual year-round camera footage. I would say that by September 15, deer are already going to be switching up, and they're going to do for the last half of September and that first week all the way up until modern, relatively the same thing. That's kind of their new pattern. And then obviously when modern comes, all stops get pulled out. Deer go into their safe spots. But we're talking that little in-between margin. I would say they're very much more to be like they are at the end of September than they would a modern season time, for sure.
But the idea is that these deer are really starting to think more about safety and hiding up.
Oh, yeah.
More than they are still feeding and trying to be patternable during daylight.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the downfalls, to touch on my point earlier, is people that sit with the muzzleloader that still operate under this idea of optics first. I'm going to glass an animal or deer and then go in after it with the muzzleloader. A lot of the success with that way, it doesn't, like, people obviously kill deer that way, but it's not as high as some people might think, because like you said, these deer aren't daylighting like how you would see them in September 1st. So you're still hunting them how they behave during rifle season. It's just, I feel like now you're even at more of a detriment because you can't shoot as far.
Right.
So that's why I've never really done the muzzleloader season, because to me, I haven't found that there's that much benefit to doing the muzzleloader season. Now, is it absolutely true that there's less hunters out there? Absolutely. I think there's like, 7,000 muzzleloader deer tag holders in a year?
Yeah, it's like 5 to 8%, I think.
Yeah, it's even less than archery.
Yeah, so if you just want to go out there and you just don't want to see people, it's a avenue to go with. But in terms of your success ratio, I don't necessarily think that you'd have a big advantage, say, over early archery or even like your general modern season.
Yeah.
So that's why I just personally haven't done it. Even the years where I have a multi-season tag, I don't even pull out my muzzleloader. Like,
I don't even own one. So.
It's not to say that like, oh, the muzzleloader season is a bad season, but you have to understand, you don't even get 2 weekends. You get the opening weekend and then it ends on a Friday. And so unless you are somebody who's taking off work to get the Monday through Friday to hunt that deer, one, you don't have a lot of time, and two, like I said, you're kind of hunting these, what I would deem harder to hunt mule deer than like these early summer type behavior deer.
But I guess there is like an argument that can be made, especially if somebody's running cameras and they say, hey, I got my cameras set up and I'm not even getting any pressure really from archery guys. So in this particular spot, I may be the first face in the woods, with a weapon in my hands. In that case, like, great. I mean, that's a bonus. So again, a lot of it goes back to your preseason scouting, your knowledge of the area. Does this area take a lot of traffic? How does this area respond to pressure? Is it a small basin that they just completely blow out with 1 or 2 hunters moving through? Or is it a big enough area to where they might, move around in that same general basin, but only relocate quarter, half mile, but stay in that same general basin, that you can still effectively glass like you would on the 1st of September and pick these deer up? And I will say, to preference my thought process for glassing, I always glass first. I mean, that's always. I'm always glass first. Prime times, I'm always going to be glassing. You're not going to find me at first light sneaking through the woods when you can barely see. That is a midday tactic that I have used, and it's served me very well. I've shot 3 bucks, good bucks, doing that. And I will use that tactic, but that will be on a day where I've already put the time in at first light glassing. Then I'll transition to that for midday. I'm never the kind, even by front country hunting, I never take like the day off in the middle because, we're in the slow window and we're going to go back to camp. I just don't operate that way. If I'm going to take the time off of work and I'm going to take the time away from wife and family, kids, like, I'm there on a mission, and we're hunting dark to dark. I don't care what hunt it is.
To vouch for muzzleloader season, I think it is the best timber hunting season. Let's put it that way, because the deer usually hold up in the timber, and with a muzzleloader, I mean, you have usually one shot, and usually if you're hunting dark timber, they're usually within muzzleloader distance.
For sure.
And like you said, they might not have the same pressure that they're facing from rifles, so they might still stand there and give you a little bit more time than, say, during rifle season when they've been bumped around. So there is merit to the muzzleloader season. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not here to just bash on the muzzleloader season. To me personally, I just haven't crossed that threshold where there's enough benefit for me to go on a muzzleloader specific hunt than like an archery or a rifle hunt. And so we're not really going to touch on muzzleloader season because, like I said, the deer, like you said, they don't really change into this new pattern. They kind of hold that pattern if they're already pressured enough. And then obviously the weapon of choice and the season dates, that's up to you whether or not you think that's worth it.
Yeah.
at deer camp, like you said, you know how many people hunt at deer camp. And so we've had in the past like 3 years, we had a lot of like camps that I've been hunting for a couple years where they all just transition over to muzzleloader. But guess what? They're not the only ones. So they go to muzzleloader season. There's still plenty of camps up there too. So it's not like at what point are you really winning? Or do you just think that it's better for your mindset that you feel like you have a better season?
I've also heard the argument that muzzleloader is before, rifle, but after archery. So you're still getting a bigger margin of crop to harvest versus if you're out at the very end of modern, or say you're late archery, you've already had 4 seasons or 3 seasons before you filling tags. And now the 3-point or better, which is most of the areas we hunt, there's less 3 points on the landscape.
And it's very true.
There is a true factor to that. It's just you got to evaluate, like, what experience do I want? When is my time off allow me to hunt? And what's my weapon choice? What do I prefer? And for me, I have no real history with muzzleloader. I may get one at some point, but I like to shoot long range, so rifle's always been appealing to me, and I love the challenge of archery. So I just stick with those two.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done much muzzleloader. I don't know Nate did a muzzleloader hunt with his dad. I think your dad does muzzleloader pretty much every year.
Yeah, my dad's done muzzleloader for the last decade, and that is primarily driven by his fact that he does not want to go out and run into as many people. And that's the type of hunt he enjoys.
What's his success rate?
I don't know. He's probably like a 50%.
Yeah.
Which is pretty
high
for him. That's maybe 30%. Once every couple of years, he shoots a deer.
Once every 3 years or so.
Yeah, but honestly, he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
He's out there to unwind and not run into people.
Yeah.
And not worry about getting shot.
So his driving factor for choosing muzzleloader is the experience. I want an experience when I'm hunting to where I'm not seeing the Orange Army.
An experience that's not based around the animals he's seeing. That's based around the
Just
not
him.
being around people. Yeah, exactly.
Right on.
So
so it's like I'm not really here to say do this or do that. We're just sharing our thoughts as to what season you want to choose, because there's merit to all of them. I've seen deer die in all the seasons.
Oh yeah.
It just depends on what you want to do and how you want to approach things. And like you said, at the end of the day, what kind of experience are you looking for?
Yep.
Well, after that, we roll right into the pumpkin patch,
the most action-packed season of the entire year.
So this is going to be our general deer season here in Washington, which this year we have a very late start. We have October 17th.
Which is awesome.
Which means we're going to get to hunt even closer to the rut, because in 2025, I think we started on the 11th, which is pretty early. But in Washington, we don't start on a set date. We always start on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And so that Saturday is always shifting depending on what year it is. And so this year, 2026, I'm pretty stoked about the 17th being the start date.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't understand the context, Washington, for mule deer specifically, we have a 10-day period. So if you start on the 17th, that means it ends on the 27th, which the 27th, you're pretty much right in pre-rut territory. Sometimes even rut territory. Whereas if you start like October 10th, your season ends the 20th, you're still kind of far from the pre-rut stuff. The advantage of hunting like pre-rut and rut is, like you said, now you're kind of starting to look at that shift of mule deer behavior where they were like previously really hold up. They're holding tight. They don't want to show themselves. And then all of a sudden, they're up on their feet. They're trying to find tail. They're trying to find that first hot doe, and they're kind of moving all over the place.
It's the first thing that I think starts to level the playing fields in our favor after they become pressured, right? It makes our job a lot easier. Let's just face it.
Depending on the year, because sometimes there are some really slow years.
I'm just saying rut in general is in the hunter's favor by far.
So what's your breakdown of your general rifle season? Let's say you had a multi-season tag. You didn't fill it on archery season. You didn't fill it on high buck. You didn't even do muzzleloader season. Now you're in rifle season. What's your go-to? Let's start with your particular animal. So let's say you have this buck you've been going after. You couldn't kill him archery season. You couldn't kill him muzzleloader season. Let's say in the area that you've been pursuing him, you can still access it, meaning there's still no snow, or at least not enough snow to push you out or push the deer out.
Yeah.
Are you still going back after him?
The answer is yes. Perfect example was last year. I'd already filled my tag on an archery buck, but I was like, you know what? My daughter's got a tag, and let's go out modern rifle. I give it to her. No trail, no nothing. We bushwhacked in there. 11-year-old girl, soon to be 12. She turned 12 just a month later. But we got back in there, and I think we only made it to about 6,200 feet. and national forest. Mind you, this is an area that we're still not quite as far as I was hoping to get, but we were facing wind, snow blowing, and it was cold, and we had bumped into 3 different groups of hunters already that morning. And I'm like, this is a totally different world than archery. I'd never seen anybody in this area. Now, mind you, we were still 2 miles from my end destination where I wanted to be at the head of this basin. But I'm like, this is good enough. We'll get in here. At least we could start to glass, and I can glass almost that 2 miles up to where I would have wanted to camp. And while we were there camping that first night, one of my cameras gets service, and I had a picture of a nice, like, legal buck, 3x4. And I'm like showing my daughter in the tent, like, this could happen if we can go 2 more miles in. Like, he's up there. And she's like, I don't know, Dad. Like, it's snowing. It's, you know. And then, of course, we had the pressure thing. So now I'm trying to think, how am I going to attack this with other people being in there? The short story is, yes, I will still pursue some of these target bucks if weather allows and it doesn't get crazy deep. But you have to approach it different because you just know that at least on the first portion of getting into some of these spots, you are going to encounter other hunters.
Yeah, and especially if you're using a trail system, the trail system is often a starting point for a lot of people.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily mean you all have the same destination. It's just you're using the same best route so that you can all eventually get to your own spots.
Yeah. And so that was exactly it. We had a few different interactions with other hunters. Ultimately, we got in, we spent one night up there, and my daughter being 11, sitting out on a glassing knob, taking wind at like 20 degrees minus the wind chill, blowing snow. She's like, Dad, is there anywhere to hunt where it's not snowing right now? And I'm like, okay, we can have option B, C, D. You know, I've got some spots. And we pulled the ripcord on that one because that just wasn't her deal. Like, if it was me, I would have still just pushed up there. The snow, we got about 8 inches on that opener, if you remember, like first or second night in. Some people killed, you know. A mutual friend of ours, Jeff, shot a bear right in the middle of that snowstorm. But anyway, I would still hunt that, but you're going to have to hunt that with pressure in mind and use that pressure to your advantage. Now, I'd always say, you know, especially when you are in the modern season, have plans A, B, C, D, E. Like, I mean, you better have a list because sometimes you face it, you get into a spot and you're like, I don't know, there's 7 trucks here and this spot's not that big. Well, you probably should just go to your next spot. You might, like you said, still be able to kill, but maybe it's because you went to spot B, C, or D. The pressure forced you into a less desirable area, according to Onyx and scouting, and that's why everybody's here, because everybody agrees that this is a geographical superior area to glass from. And so you might be in a D spot and kill, and that's because of pressure, right? You wouldn't have went there initially. Well, that's exactly what happened to me and my daughter. We pulled the ripcord, and we went, my goodness, 2.5 hours away to a different spot, set up camp that night, and killed at 11 o'clock the next morning, and seen people on our way in there. In fact, passed somebody coming down the trail, and we killed 45 minutes later. So it's a pressure game. I feel like with the modern season, you have got to be willing to be adaptable. It's just going to happen to you. And if you're the kind of person where you get super frustrated and super upset with bumping into people, seeing people, and you only had plans A and B, you're probably going to run out of options. Be willing to have workarounds. Use those people to your advantage. Not literally, but, I mean, you can definitely make it work. And we have all seen how pressure can just turn into success. But I think this is a part where, like, help your buddy out. Like, if you're getting to these positions, stay positive. Like, look, man, like, this is nothing. We've done this before. We've countered this before. We can still kill. We're still in the game. Sometimes when you've been in this situation, I've been in this situation where your hunting partner is super dejected, and they're just, like, checking out. Like, dude, this isn't even worth it anymore. Like, everywhere we go, that's just not worth it. Let's just go somewhere different, or let's just hang it up. I think that the modern rifle season, you need to be adaptable, have tons of backup options, and you need to stay mentally positive. If you're the kind of person who gets down on the scenario just because you're seeing pressure, maybe you should be a bow hunter. Maybe you should be a muzzleloader hunter. But like your dad, if he was a muzzleloader hunter and he went out and he was seeing somebody behind every bush with a muzzleloader, he might all of a sudden pick up a bow. You know, it's not necessarily the animal that you're chasing. But if it just ruins your entire week off of work because you're seeing people out there and everything, then maybe switch your season up or do something different. But if you can just get past that mentally, just say, okay, well, this didn't work. There's this many people here. We see these people going this way. We see this person pushing off that way. What's that going to do to the deer in the area? Where are they putting pressure? Where's escape routes? Jump onto Onyx and start looking at that. Because sometimes I'll be like, okay, if that guy's going to walk this ridge out and hit that glassing knob, there's a high chance that if there is something in that basin, they're going to end up there because there's an escape route and then there's some dark timber. And then maybe you were wanting to go to the spot that they're at. That's fine. This is modern rifle. Everybody gets a chance to jump in and pull a ticket. So we're going to go and now set up on an escape route. It wasn't your initial plan. You weren't even going to do that. But sometimes you're forced into those situations, and just be okay with that.
That's one of the things where, like, if you want to find a place to yourself, you got to be willing to do what most people don't want to do. And that often means you're hiking in farther. You're going through, most of the time, trailless areas just to get to into a basin and whatnot. I mean, the buck that I shot last year, he wasn't very big. I mean, Nate's been in there. The first thing you do is, like, I did like 3,200 vertical feet. Most people aren't doing that for a day hunt. But the reason why I did it is because that last year we had so many people at deer camp where, like, all the spots that I normally would have hunted, we had people there. So I'm like, I'm not going to just go if you can already cover the area. So it allowed me an opportunity to go and explore. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And I ended up shooting a little buck. Granted, it wasn't big at all, but in Washington, at some point, a legal deer is a good deer. So I wasn't going to complain about it.
Absolutely.
Right? But the pressure thing is so funny because I might be the only guy on the planet where I think pressure is fun to deal with. I like seeing people okay, not all the time, but sometimes when I'm on a hunt, I like seeing people because I'll be like, okay, on Onyx, there's a point I want to get to, and my goodness, it's a jaunt to get over there. And I get over here and I look across, there's a guy sitting there. I'm like, oh, good, he's already sitting there. I don't have to go over there. I can go where I think the deer are going to be now, and it doesn't force me to go that far. It's weird because at deer camp, we thrive off of hunting pressure. Like that, I'll be honest. Like deer camp is a spot where I would like to see people. Yeah. And for the people who kind of like roll into that area for maybe the first time and they have no experience with the area, all they do is see people and then they never come back because to them it's just like it's a pumpkin patch. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that people fail to realize, it's like if you just like talk to the person, a lot of times you can get a really good idea of what he's actually thinking, what he's planning to do. And most of the time, to my experience, they're not even on the same page as you. They might be in a spot, but they're not even looking at the spot that you would have been looking at. So even though pressure isn't really the main topic here, it's a thing that we're going to talk about because it is pretty common, pretty much across the board for all the rifle hunts that you're going to encounter, especially for the general season hunts. Yeah, you might get away with like if you drew a special limited entry or a quality tag where you might have a lot less pressure. But for the general season stuff, pressure is just part of it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to complain about pressure, then it's just not for you.
Right. And I'll say take it a step farther. If you're able to have an interaction with somebody, don't be that guy who just clams up and walks past them, doesn't say a word. Learn something from them. Find out what their routine's going to be and then use that, because I had an interaction once where I was coming up to this spot and this guy's glassing where I wanted to glass. And I just went up to him. I was like, hey, sorry, I'm not going to take the spot. I just wanted to let you know I'm here. I was going to glass here. I'm going to go somewhere else. But what's your plans for the rest of the day? Because I don't want to do something this evening that interrupts your evening glassing session or whatnot. And he says, oh, I'm almost done here. And then you see that thing down there? I'm actually going to go down the bottom, and my buddy's going to pick me in a truck. So I'm walking out and down to the road, and I'm going to post up on that little rock way down there, and I'm going to glass the last hour there. But between now and the last hour at daylight, I'm going to work my way down to that, and then I'm glassing from that rock for the last evening, and then I'm going to continue down to the road right below that. This is a front country modern rifle spot. And I'm like, oh, okay. You're logging all that. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, okay, I walk from him. I pull out Onyx. I'm like, okay, so he's doing this route, and he's posting up there for the evening hunt. Oh, I know exactly where I'm going to go, because if he walks that ridge, he's going to put an extreme amount of pressure on this belt of timber that's dark on his left, and the exposed side is wide open. So I'm going to, at the head of the basin, go around, and now I'm going to get on the other side of this ridge, and I'm going to watch the opposite side of that dark timber patch that he's going to walk right down that edge to get to that rock. So immediately I back out, have a great day, good luck, and it's a cordial, good experience. I just got some invaluable data there because that wasn't a wasted trip that he was in my spot. I'm just going to let him do a deer drive for me.
Yep.
And I loop around the head and I go set up on the other side of that belt. This worked out like clockwork. I had some deer come out. They weren't legal. I had a 2-point and some does. But if that would have been a shooter buck, it couldn't have happened any better other than it wasn't a legal deer. And that could have just as easily been a 4-point. And so my point is, be optimistic about those encounters. Don't just be like, oh, there's a guy on a glassing knob. You get 50 yards from him. He sees you. You see him. You just kind of like nod, twist around, and you're back to the truck because this is just ruined. It's not the end of the world.
No.
Make a way to capitalize on it, and you can get so much more knowledge. Just make that a little bit extra of approach. Be respectful of the guy's spot, right? They like glass around, make sure he's not on a deer or getting set up. If he's laying on a gun, probably don't walk up and talk to him, right? But there's a way to be field smart and cordial. And I feel like he would appreciate knowing, like, hey, where in the world are you going to? Because, that's just common courtesy in the field. But use it to your advantage and then take notes mentally of what he's going to do for the rest of that day. Use it to your advantage. You're already hiked in there.
Yeah, and in the instances, I always bring back deer camp because where we deer camp, there are like staple camps around the area. And over the years, like we've got to know the people there. And every single year, we already know where their guys are going to be set up. They already know where we are. And so because we have talked, and it's always friendly conversation. You say hi to each other every single year. You don't step on each other's toes at all. They're just like, we're off over here. You're doing your own thing, right? And so it's like common courtesy goes a long ways. And sometimes it can come back and benefit you.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it benefits both people. You both end up shooting a deer or something. And so that's why with a rifle, it's like, it sounds funny, but you really do hunt around the pressure. That's really the main focal point. And in the instances where you do hunt an area where, you don't run into a single hunter, now you can kind of hunt how you would normally hunt a naturally behaving deer where, all right, this is what they're doing this time of the year. This is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to focus. This is where I'm going to glass. This is where I'm going to still hunt. You can operate like that, but that's pretty rare, especially if you're hunting front country. You're usually at some point going to run into other hunters. And that's when you start using whatever information you're gaining from him, whether that's through talking to him or simply observing from a distance, to pivot your hunt.
Absolutely.
Because I've pivoted my hunt a lot during modern firearm season, and the only reason why I killed something was because I pivoted from my plan A.
Oh, yeah.
Because most of the time, here's the thing, you'll learn that your plan A really sucks. It's a terrible plan.
Yeah.
But because you're forced to go to like plan C or something, it's like, wow, this is a much better plan.
Yep.
And so the next year, guess what is now your plan A?
Plan C moved up the list.
Exactly. And so a lot of the spots that we figured out that we start being consistently successful, we would have never gone there if it wasn't for another hunter like kind of forcing us to go
smaller, tighter spots.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes just the actual corridors that these deer are using to travel from point A or wherever they're getting bumped. Because my cousin, who's shot a deer at deer camp for like 8 years in a row, he's sat on the same rock. And the reason why he's so successful there is because there is this particular spot that these deer like to feed like basically before first light, and then they'll move their way to go bed. But there's always been this camp that takes the same route every single year. And guess what they're doing? They're bumping the same deer. And those deer, like I said, they run with purpose. So when they get bumped from a certain direction, they're saying, we're going to go this way because this is a safety zone. And they always run past my cousin.
So he's hunting their escape corridor.
Every single year.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, he's like 500 yards from the main road. Like, he's not far at all.
It works.
But it's just like, that's why I'm saying it's like when you use pressure to your advantage, and a lot of times that's rifle season in a nutshell, is you're not shooting a deer that you glassed up better. You're shooting a deer that's just running because he's getting bumped. Or he wasn't even going to be bedding in a spot where you originally found him. He's there because that's like his fourth bedding spot of the day.
Yeah.
And you finally stumbled upon him. That's kind of how we've done it at deer camp. And the reason why I bring up deer camp so much is because that's where most of my mule deer hunting experience comes from. And over there, because it's a rifle hunt, this is where all my rifle experience comes from as well, right? And so it's just something that I think is very funny to talk about when it's like pressure, because it's like people don't like it, but at the same time, it's like it's a pretty useful tool.
It is. Yeah, and I don't necessarily like it, but I definitely don't let it like send me home. It'll change what I do 100% because I have option A, B, C, D, but I don't love pressure, but I've learned to work with it and make it work for me.
Yeah, like let's be honest, like everybody would love to go to spot and just have the whole place to themselves.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, right? But that's just not the world. we have a shared passion among millions of hunters. And at the end of the day, we're all out there for one reason. We love to hunt.
Yep.
Right? And so who am I to say that I belong in this spot and you don't, and you can go suck it over there? It's just like, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, you got to put yourself in their shoes. To them, it's the same exact thing to them. They're like, why is that guy over there, right? And so you just got to find common ground. And I think that's the best way to go about rifle season. If you want to hunt rifle season, you got to be willing to deal with that stuff and be able to deal with it in the best way possible.
Yeah, I think that's great. That kind of covers modern season for mule deer in a nutshell. Obviously, we're not talking whitetail, but whitetail would give you an extension of a few more days.
Yeah, you get like 3 until Friday, 3 days.
So then when that wraps up, depending upon when your start date was, you could be towards that end of October. And then now the next season that you're looking towards, if you've still got that multi-season tag in your pocket, is now you're looking at late archery. And to me, this was a tag that I haven't really hunted a lot until recently, because if you fill a tag, like, you never get to have that. And I'm the kind of guy where I don't want to wait and just start my hunting. I'm going to skip all these seasons and start hunting in late archery. So I use late archery as, that's back there with my multi-season tag. If I need it, I'll use it. But I still do all the other seasons leading up to it. And I've just, been blessed enough to usually harvest before I get to that point. 2024 was the year where I was very, very picky, trying to shoot one of those 4 target bucks. I didn't make it happen. And I hunted those deer with, a bow and with a rifle, and was not able to make it happen. And then I got thrown into the world of being able to start learning this whole late season opportunity. And then that led me to like, wow, this is a really special season. I mean, sometimes you're getting like that whole last week at the end of November, and typically you're getting rut action at that point. Mm-hmm. And then you're going all the way into some places as late as December 8th, at least last year it was. And so that is a massive window of like 2.5, 3 weeks.
So that's a season that I haven't really done. What's the deer behavior? What are they doing? Because basically we just skimped over prime rut.
Yeah.
But the rut, we're not really covering because it's not a general season.
It's
you got to
not
apply for it. So November 1st to like the 20th is when your quality mule deer tags are usually in play. Mm-hmm. And that's just peak rut, meaning the big bucks are out chasing does.
Yep.
They don't have a care in the world that you're looking at them most of the time. They're just, all they care about is running. But now you're talking about like November 25th through first week of December.
Yeah. Sometimes the 21st. Some of the areas will open up on the 21st.
What are they doing? So you said you might get a little bit of the rut action, but the rut doesn't really, for the most part, doesn't extend throughout the entire archery season. What are they generally doing after that once they've rutted?
I've only hunted this season twice with a bow, and I will say that every weekend I've been out for the 3 weekends that are open during that season, I have actively watched bucks breed does.
They're still rutting.
100%.
Yeah, that's my input to this. Last year, my dad had a quality muzzleloader tag, and that was a muzzleloader tag that bordered an over-the-counter late archery season unit.
Okay.
And out in this area, I mean, the border between the units are like, it's a side road. It's not a highway. It's not a big mountain range, nothing. I mean, you can be standing and have 1 foot in one unit, 1 foot in the other unit. And so I had my bow with me. He had his muzzleloader, and just because it was his, years drawn that tag, I never really took my bow out, but I always kind of kept my eye over in that other unit to see if there was anything. But in both units, it was really cool because it was one of those, it's not something I've ever really done, and it was some of the most unencumbered natural mule deer behavior I've gotten to see in Washington.
Let's speak on pressure. How many people you see out there doing late archery?
Not much.
Not much.
To be perfectly honest with you. And if it's nasty cold and blowing,
nobody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you want to see mule deer who just don't care anymore. I got a story that I'll tell you here at the end of this about the deer that I killed, but my deer was full on. This was the deer from 2024. He was full on lip curling, rutting, pushing this doe around. And I was coming in right at first light to this spot, and they came across the road in front of me, and he was running that doe down. And he kept, how they'll try to mount that doe, and the doe will run off from them, and they'll try again. He was just kind of doing that, paralleling on the road, and I was able to tuck the rig over. This is a front country spot, and I'm like, why am I going to pass up a stock on this deer? I'm going after this deer. And 200 yards from the road. He was just like doing his thing, chasing this doe, did not even know I was there. Like he knew I was there, but he could care less. So this is a really cool opportunity to level the playing field. If you get the timing right, the weather's right, and the bucks are still rutting, maybe you got like that post-rut action, the deer have gone into a second cycle, you can have a really cool action-packed hunt. I know that in 2024, I went on, I think it was 9 stalks before I killed a buck. Not to say that they're dumb. Like, you can't just walk up to 50 yards of a rutting buck and they just stand there.
And most of the times when you're talking about this late archery, you're hunting lowland.
Oh, yeah.
Because snow's pushing them out of the high country.
100%.
They're down. And
it's unit specific. So you do your research, look at the units and see what even allows for this. And that'll tell you kind of what we're talking about. But these deer now have become just numb to the pressure because they got one thing on their mind. Mm-hmm. And I know, like, in some of these areas, too, you know, you've got state land, you've got national forest, you've got, like, reclamation land, you've got, you know, DNR. It all is checkerboarded. And then sometimes you have ag mixed into that, private property. And you could be trying to go in this particular hunt. I was kind of going with the method of just moving, glassing, just trying to cover country and pick up deer because it's pretty glassable country. And then you turn up a buck and you find out, like, what I learned later is don't try to stalk every buck that you see just because you find one that's legal. Mm-hmm. Try to put a stalk on a buck that's actually killable, and I learned that the hard way. And don't just stalk a deer that you aren't willing to kill just for the practice, because I did that a few times. I'm like, okay, I'm in 45 yards on this big 2-point with an eye guard, and now that I'm here, I know I can kill him, but, like, I just wasted a big chunk of my day on this deer, and I'm walking back to the Jeep.
I think one of the things that you're saying that's pretty off color for Washington is these opportunities. It becomes a hunt where you're talking about multiple stalks on legal mule deer. That right then and there, you knock out most
Are you
seasons
still in
Washington.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's how I felt this last year. Is there was age class around, but it was definitely few and far between.
Yes.
And there's a lot of spikes, and there's a lot of 2x2s, and there's a lot of really nice 2x2s, those ones that just grow old and get big framed and heavy. But there's a lot of deer, and there's a lot of deer doing their natural unpressured thing because they're in a unit that got hunted during modern season back a month ago, and then they're not in a unit with a whole ton of qualities. There's not coveted quality tags.
Right.
And so now you're here on mule deer that have not been hunted for a month and are now in the rut. And like this last year with a really late rut, at least when we were out there, they weren't actually getting into the rut activity until like the last couple days of November. Mm-hmm. Like November 30th is when like we saw bucks really pushing does around. So that was just, I mean, it was a total highlight whether or not you're out there and fill a tag.
If you just want to see deer and get reps in the game.
Yeah. I mean, we saw more deer in a week than I saw the rest of the year combined. You know, you're going and having 100 deer days easily. Yeah. And if you pack right and have you're a little hardy to the weather, that's not going to bug you.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it seems like game sightings are often a lot higher than your normal general season hunt. But at the end of the day, you're hunting cold weather and you have a bow in your hand. Yeah. So your success rates are still pretty level.
Depending upon where you see these deer, a lot of times it's a lot of low vegetation. Topography presents a lot of stalking challenges. Yep. And I've done this in Arizona too. I mean, like trying to get up on a bedded mule deer in a wide open desert, not super easy.
No.
So this late hunt specifically, you will see elevated deer numbers. You will see rut activity. You will see legal bucks. I didn't say a ton of giants. I seen a few that were good. You know, some of them on private. But you're going to just have opportunities. My best day out of the 2 years I've done this hunt particularly was I had 5 stalks in a day in Washington. So 5 different legal bucks. I went on a stalk on public land in the same day. That's fantastic opportunity. Trophy potential wasn't there, but I was getting reps in the game. I was getting skill. Yeah. A couple of these deer were literally practice stalks. I just wanted to do it just to see how close I could get, and they were a legal deer, and if I got amped up right at the end, I might have shot one. I didn't. But 3 for sure, but maybe 4 out of 5 of the stalks were just aborted, like deer spotted and blew out. But it's just action-packed. You get to see deer. You get to practice and hone your skill, And eventually you're going to get presented with the question, I'm in bow range now of a legal buck. Am I going to harvest this thing? And especially if you're a new archery hunter hunting mule deer, I would say just go take the opportunity to learn your game. Get the wind right, learn how to use topography to your advantage, get down to these nooks and crannies, make your approach into these deer, and just learn your game instead of build points for some quality tag and you wait 10 years and you've only killed 1 or 2 mule deer in your life. And then now you're going to throw all the cards on the table and we're going on a quality hunt. I just dumped 15 points, but you've only shot 2 deer in your life with the bow. Get some reps in the game. Like, I've got lots of little deer on the wall. Mm-hmm. I mean, for every big one I have on the wall, I probably got 2 small ones.
Yeah.
It's just fun. I guess that's just the way to describe it. It's a completely different game. The deer I shot in 2024 actively bred that doe on December 4th before I harvested him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And another thing to mention about this is we're talking end of November and December here. And if you're an avid hunter, you've been hunting maybe since August. So August, September, October, you may have been hunting 4 full months.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those times around the areas that we hunt, it's not usually the most action-packed hunts. And so it can be a breath of fresh air to hear your alarm go off and have it be dark and 10 degrees outside, but know that if you get up, you're going to go out and watch deer.
Yep.
And like you will guaranteed see deer doing deer things. And so after a long season of hunting, it can be just a great time.
Yeah, I can vouch for the late season of just seeing deer sightings because the year when Nate and I did the late archery elk, we were elk hunting, but my goodness, the mule deer were everywhere.
Yeah.
All just bedded in the wide open, and a lot of bucks. Back to your point, a lot of the legal bucks have died because we didn't see a single 3-point. Everything was forkies, from little forkies to giant forkies. Not a single legal buck.
One weekend I seen 31 or 32 legal deer. Now this is a 2-point with an eye guard all the way up to a really, really good 170 plus buck. I've got some footage of that one. But on a 2-night, 3-day weekend, 31 or 32 legal deer in Washington. Like, that's great odds. I've never had those odds in any other season. Mm-hmm. Again, these are in sometimes harder areas to put a stock on them, especially with the flat ground or low coverage. But it's just a really, really cool season. And the deer behavior is different. You'll have no other season, unless you draw a quality tag, no other season in the entire hunting spectrum will compare to this season as far as deer behavior.
Yeah. Maybe we just ruined your honey hole. No,
but remember, I like pressure. I'll use you guys to my advantage.
You'll let them push the deer to you. Don't think you're going to show up because Austin's known these deer for years and he knows every escape corridor.
Yeah, I wish.
So basically, don't even try.
So that pretty much brings us into December.
Yep.
Which, to my knowledge, that's basically
That's pretty much it for us.
For general season, at least.
Correct. And then if you want to do some over-the-counter opportunities, still talking mule deer, still talking archery, don't everybody try to do it because it's not that good and it's not that fun. But Arizona has some options. There's a bunch of other states, that you can do your own research and whatnot. But I've got that tag again this year, and I plan on using it in either end of December or beginning of January in Arizona. And it's just a great opportunity for over-the-counter units. And who doesn't want to go hunt mule deer with a bow in January in 70-degree weather?
Yeah, I don't know. That seems pretty
I
coaxy.
mean, like, say less.
Yeah, it's crazy because, we're talking strictly mule deer.
Yes.
So the fact that you have an opportunity like that is good because when you get to December, January, most of the time people are just hunting whitetails. I mean, I know in the East Coast, their seasons are, way longer than ours. They'll go into mid-January.
Yeah.
Even late January sometimes. So outside of mule deer, if you still want to hunt deer, I mean, a lot of the East Coast, Midwest, they have opportunities there for you as well.
If you are willing to do some of these out-of-state mule deer hunts, specifically archery, like you said, you can hunt mule deer starting in July, California, and you get July, August, September, October, November, December, January. You can hunt mule deer 7 months out of the year if you incorporate a few states.
That's kind of going back to your point, there is more mule deer to go around than you can afford.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Unless you're loaded, we haven't even, that's just hunt and harvest opportunity is a 7-month window.
Yeah.
So now we take that little farther and we get beyond, say, an out-of-state opportunity in January, and now we're into that spectrum of, my goodness, we're fixing to start thinking about next season, right? Because then all of a sudden application seasons are coming up. You've been buying points. And so we got to start thinking about what is next. And when we get to that point, that mid-January to mid-March, we're already thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Where am I applying for? Where am I buying points for? And now mule deer hunting has turned into mule deer strategy season again already. And we're going to start just moving really quickly up to preseason scouting. And so I start planning my year as soon as the last tag is punched, whether that's December or January. I start kind of looking out into that future. And then once I get that preliminary of, okay, this is where I'm buying points, this is where I'm applying points, now you're in that, I got to wait till draw odds come back. So you're in a little bit of a limbo. Well, lucky for you, if you're a shed hunter, or if you want to try shed hunting, you could fill up some of that waiting time for applications to come out or draw results to come out, and you could start shed hunting. I mean, we're coming up right to it right now.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm not surrounded by many shed fanatics around here, and I'm not a high success shed hunter by any means, but this is one of my favorite times of the year. And it goes along with that same thing of watching mule deer. Like, it's a different time of the year. They're not rutting or anything like that, but you get to go out and you get to see deer and maybe pick up some antler and stay active. And it's starting to get nice weather again after some really long, dark, cold nights and short days and nasty weather. You're starting to get some sunny days, and this is just a great time of the year to be out, and shed hunting is just a blast. And it's a great way to be out without that goal of filling a tag. It's a lot easier to be open to, like, just kind of, you're meandering around anyways. So you can kind of go off course. You can watch animals. You can kind of just absorb everything going on out there without kind of feeling like, man, I know I got to sit behind the glass and watch this timber
It's
edge.
a low pressure activity.
It's a low pressure. And as a side note, anybody that has kids, it is such a great family activity because it's more or less out there in the hunting woods, hunting for something, but you know, the kids don't have to be quiet. You can make it as easy a day or as hard a day as you want. It's a great activity in that regard.
Yeah, it's a low expectation, right? You can just get the kids out there like, we're going to be doing it this year. My two girls, I got a 3-year-old and a 12-year-old and my wife, and we're all going to head out and go shed hunting. She doesn't have to be quiet. Like, it's a totally different approach as if I was going to take my 3-year-old with me while I'm hunting. You know, like, I just wouldn't do it. She's not there yet. But this is ways you can get out and enjoy a portion of what I enjoy. And there's just no pressure. It's just, let's go out there, let's have fun, and let's just have a blast. If she finds something, great. She's going to find something because I brought some sheds with me to drop in front of her. It's going to be an Easter egg hunt for her.
Yeah, and to tie that bag, shed hunting is also a pretty good way to learn where they winter.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. It becomes a
drop,
scouting season in a way.
Exactly. If you know where they're dropping antlers, it's probably a good place to look when you're hunting those super late season hunts because they're probably not too far from them.
Yep. And if you're hunting an area, you know, like we have an infamous unit here in the state that is a draw unit only. But if you are like shed hunting some of these areas and you're holding 20 points, 25 points, whatever max points is, and you know you've been holding out this, it's this unit for me or bust, you're going to learn a lot about where you're going to be hunting.
Yeah.
So it becomes a very important tool for maybe a future quality hunt that you might draw. That's a good way to look at it, and it's just fun.
Okay, you guys can stop talking about trying to coax me to go shed hunting. I'm not going.
He's not going to ever do it. The man don't care.
Oh, my goodness. So anyway, you know, mid-February to mid-April, you're knocking out shed hunting. You're, you know, keeping that winter fat back in that bay now because you had a few months off. We're hitting some miles on the boots. Then you got that mid-April to mid-June window of time, and I like to think of this as that finalization time. I've got to start honing my plan in for that season. This is when draw results are coming back during some of these windows. And so this is where you really start to like, okay, I did draw this, I didn't draw that. We're going out of state here. We're going to hunt this one at home. So you're already honing in your game for the next year, and you're really starting to dial it up. And then by the June 15th, like a lot of the results are back by then. I know at Washington's is June.
Usually second week, yeah.
And so you're starting to know, you get a really tight feel for what your season's going to do. And then as soon as you know and you have that plan in place, I always have it like clockwork. It's either, depending upon the high country snowpack, which is this year's terrible, but for sure by June 1, I'm scouting and I'm setting cameras. And it's go time all the way till we start repeating this whole podcast that we just started. On September 1, it starts over. From June and July is just cameras and scouting and boots on the ground and learning and obtaining new target bucks for the next season. And then you get a little cherry on top with August, because now I can scout these with a rifle in my pack. And if I see a bear, he's down. And that's worked out for me several times. But it's just a 3-month window. You get to hunt a little bit for bear in that last month of August, but June, July, August, it's giving you all that data to know when and where and how you are going to kill, and in a lot of instances, what deer you're going after.
In your mind, June 1st is when you're like, this mule deer season's starting here.
Yes.
And I would assume part of that has to do with the fact that that's probably when you can first even access some of these spots.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're talking about elevation. That's why I said maybe some years. Last year I was stupid. I went in, there was, forgot my snowshoes, and I was post-holing thigh deep, and at like 6,400 feet, I just tapped out. I'm like, I can't do it no more. Like we got 3 to 4 feet here in the flats, and like some of like the shaded sides and the windswept areas. Like, I don't know how deep it was. And so snow melts off very, very rapidly in that month of May. So you could go 2 weeks later and it'd be a dramatic difference. But for me, June 1, like Father's Day, it's go time for sure. Father's Day weekend, like you can get most places.
And if you're to a point where you're hunting for a certain class of deer or a certain maturity of deer, that gets you to a point where you start to have enough antler growth a lot of times that you can start to see what deer are going to be.
Yep.
Because it can be real tough in those early, you've basically got their bases to go off of.
Yeah.
But once they start to grow their frame out there in that early June, even before they start to real fork out, you can still get an idea.
Yeah, I mean, if you get some massive, massive bases and they get wide as their ears fast, like if you're seeing, and we could talk maybe briefly, this podcast is just running away, but we could talk about field judging and even camera judging, like based on date stamps. Like if you're getting deer that's as wide as his ears and it's only like early June and he's barely forking out, but his main beam bases until you get to your first fork and he's already as wide as his ears and heavy, heavy beams, and you're already seeing eye guard bumps, probably a buck you better keep track of.
So one of the questions I have, and maybe you have the answer, maybe you don't. So when they grow their bases out and you first see that bump, do they get any wider than that throughout the growing season, or do they start out as wide as they're going to be? Because I don't think that their bases necessarily get any bigger.
I could be completely wrong, but I only got my camera data to go off of. And I feel like by mid-June, you can tell just based on the mass of that buck and what they're doing at that first fork, not like actually at their, G2 and G3, but at that first fork. That is a good indicator, in my opinion, of what that buck's potential is. And I think you can tell that by June 15.
I just think that if you're going to talk about the base, and when I'm saying the base, I'm talking about right where the antler starts touching the head.
Yep.
Because when they've shed the antlers, you have these giant pedicles. It's open.
Yep.
And I feel like when they first grow antlers, they fully fill that circumference.
Correct.
And so I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's a pretty good way to judge the mass of the animal. Now, whether or not the mass has anything to do with age class or anything.
Well, it does, because say, for instance, like that buck behind you versus this buck, the pedicle will continue to grow in circumference as the deer ages. So naturally, their bases are going to get bigger and bigger.
Which is why those early indicators, when like, let's say they're just right here, if this is already super thick, super massy, you probably have a pretty good buck on your trail cam.
Yep, exactly.
And something to think about too, like if you're looking at bases and pedicles, is with a young deer, every year you break off a little bit of that antler stump when it sheds. And so the older those animals get, the closer those bases and those pedicles where they meet get close to the skull.
I mean, it's a prime example. You see how young that deer is and how bony it is?
A great example of this, if you guys want to see like this on steroids, is Google a picture or look at an elk spike, a spike elk euro. And you will see that like a spike elk, we have some of them sitting behind us, will have 2, 3, maybe even 4 inches of skull before you get to the antler, versus a mature elk euro, which will have those bases of those pedicles of those antlers like right up next to the skull.
Yep.
So it is something to think about.
So yeah, you got that last little section of time before you actually get to put a weapon in your hand and chase with a bow on September 1st. And I feel like June, July, August, I would say that July is the most important month.
I agree.
July is the most important month of all of them for preseason for me. But, before, historically, we were allowed to put out salt. And so I'd run salt in front of my cameras until last year. And, if you're starting to get bucks, again, that aren't patterned but are getting pretty predictable, you're starting to get a good feel for what's coming in by like June 15th. But like July just seems like blow up. They just are putting on inches in July. And so I am just stoked about the month of July. You just get so much data on the deer that are on camera in the month of July. And then, of course, August has its own little treat because now you got a rifle on your back or a bow if you want to shoot one with a bow. And that's just a bonus, having that opportunity. Like, hey, if you see a bear, you can go after it. So now you're actually able to draw blood. You're in the game. But still, when I'm doing that, like I'm still like focused on mule deer, and bear's just like a bonus. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, man, like the whole year went by and you're doing something with mule deer, being involved with mule deer. And you're like, oh, it's time to put the rifle down. August scouting season and bear hunting combo is over. And we're picking up a bow. And the pattern will just go and go and go.
The year of the mule deer goes by quick.
It sure does.
When you think of it from a mule deer cycle, it's fast.
It's fast.
I have a problem with just thinking about hunting in general. Makes it even faster.
Oh, man. That was good. I mean, you know what goes by faster than mule deer hunting?
What?
Podcasts.
I agree.
Mule deer podcasts.
Yeah, we're definitely
Well,
not
as
2
much
hours
as
into a podcast.
as much
here,
as
folks.
we want to keep Austin around, there's so many things to talk about. Like scouting alone could be 3 podcasts. Let's be honest here. We haven't even,
Cameras,
oh man, it's
how you set them, where you set them, tips and tactics to prevent false triggers.
well, it looks like Austin will just have to make a trek back over here during June or something.
Oh, man. Take me turkey hunting and I'll come back.
Hey,
there we go.
we got turkeys right here.
Yeah, step out the front door.
But no, folks, that's us picking Austin's brain because I don't think people put enough emphasis on how to actually plan a hunt. I mean, I get accused of it all the time. People are like, how is this guy hunting deer so much? I'm like, dude, it's a multi-season tag. That's been around forever.
Yeah.
But they don't know about it.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, if you just spend some time, I mean, everything we basically just told you guys here, you can find in the regulation book.
Nothing when we talked about was a quality tag. Nothing was a drawn tag. This is all OTC for a resident Washington hunter. Everything we spoke about, with the exception of a couple of the really extreme early archery tags, July and August, and then like a December,
January,
end of December and January. We still have some December opportunity here.
Yeah. But it's like what we disclosed today. If you spend an hour just like actually reading our regulation pamphlet, it's there.
It's all there.
Now, what we shared is the actual real life experiences as to what you might experience within that hunt. But even then, I feel like we've hardly scratched the surface because it's been a very generalized podcast. Yeah. But with that said, that's kind of how this guy over here is constantly on mule deer bucks. I mean, Austin texted me the photo of him shooting the one last year. I forgot. I was at squirrel camp. I remember it was me and Chris. We were sitting on this log. We were waiting for the squirrel to come out, and Austin gives me a call, and I'm like, oh, maybe he found a target buck or something, because the day previous, he's like, I'm going to go up here and put the bow on my back. He calls me, dude, smoked a buck, man. I'm back here in my car, and it looks like I can go and do an elk hunt now. And I'm like, oh, good for you. And he's like, yeah, I had this buck. He wasn't really the one I'm after, but he was good enough. I'm like, well, I guess that's how easy it goes sometimes when you've done the prep work.
Yeah, what people don't see is like I had 3 months in that basin, 7 trips in there in the previous 3 months. Mm-hmm. So that was actually my 8th trip in there since like the last weekend of May, which I failed to get all the way in there because I didn't have my snowshoes.
Yeah. But that's kind of why we wanted to pick your brain, because you just elaborating on how you go about your deer, because we always joke about you where we say you figuratively kill the deer before the season starts, because you're kind of the epiphany of that. Like you are the definition. You are the definition of somebody who has studied a specific deer or sometimes multiple deer so well that when the season comes, you're not stressing or you're not starting out where I think a lot of people are starting out. A lot of people today, they go out to the woods, zero scouting time put in, and they're out there, and they're just like, I hope there's a deer.
And that's the hardest hunt of all. You know, I told my wife one time, and she was just laughing like, what are you talking about? I said, I got home from a scouting trip, and she's like, how'd it go? I'm like, well, he's dead. He just don't know it yet. I'm like, he is so dead. I've got him dialed this weekend. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the work's done. I just got to show up and be in the right spot, and he's dead.
Yeah. So I hope that that's an encouragement for you guys to get on OnX right now, start scouting. I mean, we shared a pretty decent amount of ideas of how you guys can scout, even just navigating areas where there's no pressure to a little bit of pressure to a lot of pressure. How we go about things, because at the end of the day, folks, we're doing the same hunts you guys are doing.
Yep.
We don't have a special privilege hunting areas where you guys cannot and we can, or getting a tag that we can hunt but you can't. Everything I did last year was a general season hunt, or at most it was a 1 point draw where anybody could have applied and drew for it. So with that said, that's going to wrap up episode number 2 of Mule Deer March. We would appreciate you guys' feedback if you guys want Mule Deer March to be a thing, because I love it.
Oh, me too.
I love talking about
just
mule deer.
just sitting back and listen to people who really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and
Talk about mule deer.
And
is
like
great.
I said, as much as we have disclosed, I mean, we had 2 hours with Brock. We've had 2 hours with Austin today.
Yeah.
4 hours of talking mule deer, and I still feel like we're not even.
given like global, like umbrella level view.
Yeah, like
There's so much to be said about the superior species.
I agree. I totally agree. But with that said, Austin, normally like we let people plug, but you don't really do social. So here's a time if you want to plug something. If not,
Yeah,
have
I
to.
don't really have any plugs to give away. I don't have any coordinates to give away. So
Oh, dang it. It's all good. You can give it to me
If
after.
you actually go back and listen to this podcast, he gives a GPS coordinate in code throughout this whole podcast.
no, I'll just recap it by saying like, hey man, this opportunity is out there for everybody. If you're diligent and working for it, e-scouting and getting out there, success will come with repetition. Just get out there and get in the game. You lose every fight that you don't step in the ring.
And one of the things I'll add on to that is too many people think of it as a 1 year ordeal. Sometimes it takes you 5 years to
man.
figure out a basin.
Oh.
Too many people think, oh, how am I going to be successful this year? Which isn't necessarily wrong, but it can come out to bite you if you use that as an excuse to quit. Because it's taken me multiple years sometimes to learn one particular area.
I always say in mule deer hunting, failure is your biggest teacher.
Yep.
You fail and you're like, okay, that didn't work. I'll never do that again. But what I did learn is what would work there. And then you have to come back the next year to prove what you think in your mind will work. And then when it works, you just start connecting the dots so much faster. And it's like a compound interest graph. It just hockey sticks and goes straight up. And I believe your success rate will prove that.
And I think that right there, that obsession right there kind of separates the people who truly love it and the people who just want to shoot something. Because the people who just want to shoot something, they don't enjoy that process. But the people who are truly passionate about learning mule deer, learning an area, that to them is fun. Like they're like, I want to go out there and learn these animals. Whereas the people who don't genuinely enjoy that, all they're doing is, hey, send me a spot where I can go shoot a deer.
Yeah.
They don't want to put in the work.
So I've had a lot of that.
Oh, imagine what I get.
I couldn't even imagine that.
And I'm like, dude, I'm shooting little dingy 3-points. Why are you asking me? But with that said, let's wrap this up and jump into fast facts. Do you have a fast fact for us?
I do.
Let's hear it.
All right. This is kind of a cool fast fact, but in the realm of trying to field age a deer by looking at his teeth. So fawns 1 year or under, they still have all their premolars, and these are what they call milk teeth. So then the first 3 premolars in their mouth will have 3 cusps. If they have 2 cusps, they've already lost a baby tooth, or what they call the milk teeth, and then now they are going to be a year and a half old deer. And so you can kind of start to gauge a deer based by these, and this is good up till about 5 years, and this has, according to this Parks and Wildlife, has about an 80 to 87% accuracy rating up until 5.5-year-old bucks. And then once you get beyond 5.5, then the accuracy goes down because you can't use all of these like tooth replacement factors and the dentine lines. But when a deer is a year and a half old, that 3rd premolar will have 2 cusps and become a permanent tooth. Whereas if it's less than a year old, the first 3 premolars will all just have 3 cusps. So a mature deer has 2 cusps on their premolars, which would be a year and a half old if it has that on the third tooth back, which is your third premolar. And then if you go to 2.5 years old, you start to judge by wear and the dentine exposure, which is that dark inner tooth material. It's like a little dark line in between the enamel.
I think it's right there. You can see it.
And at 3.5 years old, the cusps will start to be rounded, and then that center dentine line, and we're talking on the cheek side, so if the tooth has kind of a V-notch in the middle, this inside notch closest to the tongue, you'll see a brown line in there. And if that brown line is wider or narrower than the enamel on each side of that edge of the tooth, you can determine age of 3+ years old. So your cusps will be starting to round, and the dentine will be wider than the enamel on some of the molars. So maybe your first and second molar, which is your fourth and fifth molar back, because you have 3 premolars and then 3 regular molars. And then at 4.5 years, you'll notice noticeably flattening of the molars, and then the denting line is clearly wider than the adjacent enamel. So now that white strip is narrower than that brown strip of dentine, and that's a 4.5-year-old buck. Then when you get to a older deer, you're starting to get to that 5.5 and beyond. That's when you start to lose. There's not as much definitive separation. The teeth will look flat, heavily worn. Your enamel ridges now get to be very thin, and the dentine dominates almost the entire chewing surface of the tooth. And after about 6 years old, tooth aging becomes more vague because teeth deteriorate very quickly.
There's not enough detail.
And so 6, 7, 8-year-old bucks, it's hard to tell the difference between them. But yeah, I thought it was super intriguing that there is a relatively accurate way, 80 to 87%, according to this source, for deer that are, fawn level up to 5.5-year-old bucks. It's just pretty cool. So next time you shoot a deer, open his mouth, look at those count cusps, starting from front to back, and look at dentine widths compared to relative enamel on the tongue side of the tooth edge, and you'll maybe know if you got a 3.5, 4.5, 5.5-year-old buck.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think I'll stick to judging by antler size.
See, that's very deceiving.
Yes, it is.
Because if you're in a really good genetic area,
yeah, think this right here, what, 6.5?
6.5.
6.5, that's a 3.5. 2 blacktails.
yeah.
That's why antler size, folks, I'm joking, by the way. That's why you don't judge by antler size, because antler is also so dependent on nutrition. And like this year,
dependent on
I'm a
everything.
little bit nervous that we're going to have a terrible growth year this year because we don't have enough moisture.
I know.
Yeah.
But I don't shoot big bucks anyway, so what do I care about? Well, do you have one for us? I'll round it out for us.
Sure. This is from 2024. Just some interesting numbers about the Mule Deer Foundation. So between education, habitat improvement, and other improvements such as fence removal, fence repair, all of that, the Mule Deer Foundation invested $53.1 million into mule deer and black-tailed deer. This impacted 122 separate herds over 18 states and 700,000 acres. Here's the cool part. So 17.2 of that, 17.2 million, was invested solely by the Mule Deer Foundation, and that was matched at a rate of 3.1, meaning that 35.9 million of that was raised through hunters, fundraisers, and philanthropic events.
Wow.
Wow.
So just as a case for hunters being passionate about conservation and being passionate about the animals that they chase,
That's
I thought
awesome.
that was just crazy. Numbers that you can't really wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
But when you hear that 122 different mule deer herds were impacted by conservation efforts from Mule Deer Foundation alone, I thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well, mine, I'm sticking to the mule deer. I don't know if we've done this one before, but this just has to do with where mule deer name comes from. Now, a lot of people will know the general idea that a mule deer came from a mule, but this is the actual origin and the time and place where it actually came from. So the first description of the mule deer was written by Captain Meriwether Lewis, a.k.a. Mr. Lewis of the Lewis and Clark expedition, on May 10th, 1805. Okay, so May 10th, 1805 is when we got the first actual description written on paper about the mule deer. So this was about 8 months after George Dewey, who was a scout for Lewis and Clark when he first discovered the new deer species. So they saw the mule deer for the first time, and then it took 8 months before Lewis actually tried to describe this animal. And this is, quote, what Lewis wrote. The ear and the tail of this animal, when compared with those of the common deer, so well comported with those of the mule when compared with the horse, that we have by way of distinction adapted the appellation of the mule deer, which I think much more appropriate, end quote. That is the origin of where the name mule deer came from. So it's not like a random person just walked up there and be like, hey, that guy's got mule ears. Yeah. No, it was actually a very concise and designated purposeful writing from Meriwether Lewis to say that's a mule deer.
Very interesting.
Wow. What you're saying is he's the father of mule deer scouting.
Perhaps. Can you imagine the mule deer they were seeing back then in 1805? They probably just thought it was normal and a 250. Yeah. Whatever.
Incredible. Well, guys, long one today, as you can expect with Austin, because we always seem to get into a little bit of a time warp.
You guys best expect 2-hour podcast from Mule Deer March.
But hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We sure do. We enjoyed all these. And not really anywhere to find Austin other than here. I know a lot of you guys reach out to us and try. We love the little bits of information we can get and discussion we can have. We will continue another week of Mule Deer March next week, and we're very excited about that one as well.
New face next week. Stay tuned.